Chapter 1258. He hoped that all the god emperors in the endless divine world were as unlucky as these four. They were short-tempered, stubborn. Otherwise he would be too embarrassed to kill them. Just like the 8 divine emperors from before, Qin Guang still couldn't bring himself to take someone's life, even if he knew that there were benefits. However, he was not worried that no one would come to die. Since the 4 god emperors said that they wanted to kill him, then when the next task came, as long as he put out his name, there would naturally be countless gods who would overestimate themselves and come to die. In that case he would have to thank the 4 gods. After walking for a while, a bustling city appeared in front of the 3 of them. The architectural style of this city was very strange. It had a strong Han and Tang dynasty charm, but the material of the city wall was solid cement. Looking at the rather strange clothes of the people going in and out of the city gate, Zhou Xian and Lu Fei felt that their brains were a little broken. Lu Fei decisively started to complain, "What the hell? Why are some people wearing casual clothes and some wearing ancient clothes? If I didn't know that this is the Jinwu Island in the game, I would have thought that this is the Hengdian film city." Zhou Xian turned back to look at Qin Guang. Seeing that he had been guessed, Qin Guang smiled embarrassedly. "Yes, this is all my credit. When he was still here as the Jinwu Holy Emperor, he could not bear to see the shoddily built buildings in the realm of true martial, so he racked his brains to come up with the method of burning grass and wood ashes to make cement. Later, because he was not used to wearing long robes, he simply figured out a way to wear casual clothes. He was not a tailor, so he did not have that ability. But who was he? He was the strongest martial sage in the realm of true martial arts. He was the supreme existence at the highest peak of this world. He was admired by millions of people. Tens of thousands of people would flock to him with just a single word. In order to cater to his tastes, even a martial emperor with a long lifespan would be willing to start from scratch and become a tailor or a fashion designer. There were a lot of talented people in the true martial world. If someone really made casual clothes that Qin Guang liked to wear, then Qin Guang would casually reward them with secret treasures. In the land of true martial arts, where the law of the jungle was practiced to the extreme, Qin Guang was the strongest martial artist. His hobbies were the wind vane, and others would naturally try to imitate him. After all, many people in the realm of true martial had experienced modern casual clothes. And they felt that the comfort of wearing such clothes wasn't comparable to that of traditional clothes. Of course, there were also people who preferred loose robes. And what was reflected in front of these 3 people was this strange mix of modern and ancient styles. They didn't know how many years had passed in the world of true martial after Qin Guang had left. Everyone had just arrived at the 2nd floor, and this had already happened. Qin Guang thought that the deeper they went, the more modern styles would become. After all, he had ascended layer by layer. He hadn't returned to the lower world after he had become a martial emperor. Therefore, most of the things that he had left behind were reflected in the higher world. He remembered that someone had created a steam engine on the 9th floor of the true martial world according to his idea before he had left. However, he didn't know whether the internal combustion engine and integrated circuit had appeared or not. It was strange that he couldn't return to the lower world the last time he had come here. However, there was no such drawback this time. His formidable strength didn't affect the operation of the yin and yang qi in the surroundings. On the contrary, the yin and yang qi in the surroundings had become richer because of his existence. Qin Guang speculated that this might be because he had broken through and become a martial sage. He had transcended the shackles of the land of true martial, and had become the true master of this world. It might also be because he had entered the transformed world of true martial as a player. The rules of the world had changed, and people like him wouldn't be suppressed. Since there were originally natives wearing modern clothes, the 3 of them didn't have to worry about being treated as a maverick. They swaggered towards the city gate. However, they still encountered an unexpected situation. "Stop. Hongba City charges 300 holy coins per person. You can only enter after paying the fee." 8 guards blocked the city gate. The captain of the guards held a shiny iron spear in front of the 3 of them and said sternly. While speaking, the captain's eyes quietly drifted over to Zhou Xian and Lu Fei. Although the 2 women didn't have their original appearances in the real world, the reasonable game system didn't reduce their aesthetics even though it had remade their bodies. Coupled with the strengthened bodies of the 2 A-level players as well as the temperament they had cultivated in the real world, the women in a small city on the 2nd floor of the true martial world couldn't compare to them. Qin Guang and the other two were instantly embarrassed. Although the three of them were rich in the real world, they didn't have any currency in the true martial world. I'm sorry, we are just passing by and will leave soon. We left in a hurry and didn't bring any holy coins with us. Can you make an exception? Before Qin Guang could speak, Lu Fei stood up and tried to communicate with the other party. Of course, communication was ineffective. This wasn't a world where they could open the back door just by speaking nicely. The captain of the guards snorted coldly and raised his spear. The cold tip of the spear was aimed at the three of them. Get lost if you don't have money. Hongba City isn't a place where anyone can enter. If I let you in, the city lord will kill me. At the side, Qin Guang covered his mouth and chuckled. He raised his hand to pull Lu Fei behind him and stood in front of the captain's spear. Without turning his head, he said, "Big sister Lu Fei, you don't know the rules of this world. There are two types of currency in circulation here. This holy coin is for the weak, but it's not very useful. The only currency used is this." As he spoke, he raised his fist. How dare you? How dare you insult the holy coin? This is a capital crime. Unexpectedly, the captain of the guards on the other side exploded. Without saying a word, he pushed the tip of the spear forward, intending to stab Qin Guang. Qin Guang slapped the tip of the captain of the guard's spear with a backhand. With a loud clang, the iron spear flew out of his hand and went straight into the city wall beside him. It completely sank into the wall and even the handle of the spear disappeared. Then Qin Guang looked back at the two girls and said, "Strength is the eternal currency used in the realm of true force." After saying that, he stomped his feet again. A terrifying tremor spread from his feet and spread throughout the entire Hongba city. In the blink of an eye, many people on the streets and alleys were shocked by his aura and tremor, falling to the ground. As for the city guards in front of the three of them, they were even more frightened. The captain fell to the ground and stared blankly at Qin Guang. Based on the strength he displayed just now, he was at least a martial venerable on the 5th level. Yet he appeared in the city on the 2nd level. It was simply overwhelming. Can we enter the city now? Qin Guang still had a smile on his face, but his tone was clearly threatening. The captain of the guards trembled and said, "You can enter the city, but you used words to humiliate holy coins. There will no longer be a place for you in the vast land of true force." At this moment, Qin Guang had the urge to slap that brat to death. Isn't that brat's head a little too hard? After the three of them entered the city, Qin Guang directly entered the city lord's mansion. The city lord was afraid of Qin Guang's strength and welcomed him in. He even offered a large amount of holy coins. Only then did Qin Guang understand why the captain of the guards was so angry. After he left, the forces led by the various layers of true martial Holy Emperor City had uniformly implemented a currency reform. The banknotes and banknotes they issued were printed with his face. Insulting holy coins was equivalent to insulting the true martial Holy Emperor and insulting Qin Guang himself. It was no wonder that the captain of the guards and the passers-by were unhappy with him even though they knew the difference in strength. Why are you so thick-skinned? Also, if other players see this banknote, they will probably know that it's you, right? Chu Zijin looked at the holy coins in front of her and couldn't help but say. Qin Guang coughed twice. What was the weirdest thing in this world? The most awkward thing? That was, I'm still alive and well, but my face is printed on the banknote. Fortunately, I didn't kill the captain just now. He must be a fanatical fan of mine. You guys sit down and drink some tea first. I will ask the city lord to make arrangements. Although we can walk very fast now, running to the 9th layer of true martial Holy Emperor City is still too long. Before I left behind some ideas. I don't know how much time has passed and whether they have been realized. If we're lucky, we can speed up a lot. The poor city lord was very reluctant to be dragged along by Qin Guang for a long time. Qin Guang casually found an excuse. He said that the three of them came from a hidden sect. The experts in the sect had been practicing hard all year round and didn't know much about the outside world. This time they came out because the sect ordered them to do so, so they needed to understand more about the world first and so on. After a long time, the city lord walked out of the door with a head full of doubts. His consciousness was a little fuzzy. Qin Guang pondered over the information he had just collected. If he didn't ask, he wouldn't know. Now that he asked, he was shocked. The flow of time in the true martial realm was very different from the flow of time in the Xianyuan Sea. Since the last time he left, millions of years had passed in the true martial realm. In this long period of time, the many legends and forces left behind by the true martial holy emperor still influenced the development and evolution of the entire true martial realm. However, the evolution of human history in the true martial realm was on a completely different channel from that of Earth. On Earth, it had only taken a few thousand years to develop from an ancient society to a modern high-tech society. If the people of Earth were given another 10,000 years, they would probably be able to cover the entire Milky Way galaxy. If they were given another 1,000,000 years, the people of Earth might even be able to travel across the universe. However, in the true martial realm, Qin Guang had spent 130,000 years to climb to the peak of this world step by step. He had also left behind countless traces of modern society. However, millions of years had passed. Except for a few fields, the level of science and technology in this world had remained at the level of ancient times. Zhou Xian and Lu Fei felt that it was inconceivable when they heard this. Compared to the pace of scientific and technological progress on Earth like Moore's Law, not to mention millions of years, perhaps, spaceships would already be flying in the sky after 1,000 years. However, Qin Guang vaguely knew the reason. There was a big secret hidden in it. The rules of the true martial realm were still incomplete. It was just like how the people of this world could be reborn after they died. The people of this world looked exactly the same as the people of Earth. They all had 7 emotions and 6 desires. However, in the depths of their minds, they lacked a very important thing. That was creativity. The scientific and technological progress on Earth seemed to be the result of continuous accumulation of accidental discoveries. However, it was actually the inevitable result of the burst of inspiration of geniuses that had brewed in the long river of history. The geniuses of the true martial world would choose to practice martial arts in order to cater to the preferences of the Lord Sage Emperor. After all, one's own strength was the only thing one could rely on in this world. After all, one's own strength was the only thing one could rely on in this world. One could cultivate to the pinnacle and become a martial emperor. A martial sage like the Lord Sage Emperor could even rule a world by himself. Forget it. It's not a big deal to fall behind. However, fortunately, they developed the internal combustion engine on the basis of the steam engine. We actually have a plane. Qin Guang shrugged his shoulders. The biggest good news was the information that he had dug out from the mouth of the city lord. The plane would definitely be much faster than the 3 of them walking. According to the city lord, the plane was a new thing that had been born in the last 10,000 years. It still had many disadvantages. Moreover, it was not very stable. Even the accident rate was quite high. Its flying speed was far from the sound barrier. Its popularity was also very low. In the second layer, only a few dozen of the top big cities had this kind of advanced goods. However, it was still better than nothing. It was said that in the 4th layer, more reliable planes began to appear. There were even new planes that combined the internal strength of the martial artist and the internal combustion engine. After listening to the information that Qin Guang had inquired, Lu Fei said, "So what should we do now? Why do I feel that we actually don't need to go to the 9th layer? Although we can directly jump to the 59th island, won't we waste too much time on the 50th island?" Zhou Xian was not in a hurry to express her opinion. Instead, she was thinking. Qin Guang shook his head and said, "Not necessarily. Calculating the time, let's first go to the 4th layer and find that new plane. With my strength, we should be able to reach the 9th layer in 2 or 3 days. With my understanding of the Tongtian. Oh no, the mission system starting from the 50th island, the floating islands will definitely become more and more troublesome. We will definitely have a chance to jump to the next layer." Lu Fei shrugged. "Alright, we'll do as you say." Next, the 3 of them took the holy coins with Qin Guang's face printed on them. They either took a car, hurried on foot, or rented a cheaper plane. On the 3rd day, the 3 of them arrived at the 2nd layer's big city, Martial World City. Then Qin Guang used the same trick and directly went to the city lord's mansion. They got on the plane and set off. In these few days, Lu Fei and Zhou Xian felt like they were on a tour. They saw a lot of local customs that they had never seen before. It was quite interesting. However, a lot of other players, especially low-level human players, had a hard time in the realm of true martial where everyone practiced martial arts. Many people finally got their hands on the legendary holy coins after going through a lot of hardships, perhaps by working for others or by extortion. When they got on the transportation to the various layers of true martial holy emperor city, these human players were really annoyed by Qin Guang's face. The Protoss players were not much better. At first they were crazy, but soon they were chased by the countless warriors who were not afraid of death. They could not sleep at night. In this chaotic situation, Qin Guang and the other two finally arrived at the fourth layer's Holy Emperor city. They got on the plane and flew directly to the ninth layer. Even though the city lord, who had been hijacked by Qin Guang, repeatedly stressed that the plane could not withstand the impact of the ninth layer, Qin Guang and the other two did not take it seriously at all. Qin Guang also wanted to know what level the plane could reach if he used his full internal energy to accelerate it. Chapter 1259. Are you ready? Qin Guang, who was wearing a leather hood, turned around and asked the two girls while standing on the top of the legendary internal energy plane. Zhou Xian and Lu Fei looked around on the oddly shaped plane. They didn't have much confidence. Are you sure we're going to use this plane to fly thousands of miles? You're not joking, are you? Lu Fei already knew a lot about Zhenwu Land. As a modern human, she felt that she would fall apart if she were to sit on this thing and fly such a long distance. Zhou Xian didn't say anything. She just looked around at this strange object that was about 15 meters long. It didn't look like it was made of steel, but more like some animal fur and a special, sturdy piece of wood. On the whole plane, only the core components such as the engine, propeller and transmission gear were made of special metal that looked strong. As for the other components, especially the fuselage, they were pitiful. It always made people feel that the combination of each component was unstable and could fall apart at any time. What was more tragic was that the plane was open. Even the most experienced and knowledgeable person had never seen an open-top plane. There were open cars and open boats in this world, but an open plane that had to fly thousands of miles was out of the question. No wonder Lu Fei felt uneasy. Qin Guang also felt rather awkward. After all, this was something that countless intelligent life forms in the true Martial continent had come up with under his inspiration. Yet it had such a weird and knockoff design. It was embarrassing for him. No, you don't understand. Look at this wood, it's the toughest part of the core of the 1,000-year black iron tree's bottom 3 meters. After 81 days of processing, this black iron tree's hardness and toughness even surpass special steel. After soaking it, it's even more incredible. As he spoke, Qin Guang flicked it with his fingers. Sure enough, it made a tinkling sound. Okay, I'll take what you said as the truth. But what is this? There aren't even screws? The boards are actually connected by ropes? Lu Fei pointed to a place beside her. Qin Guang coughed twice. This isn't an ordinary rope. It's the tendon of a strange beast, Qingli, that lives in the 7th layer of the true martial world. It's a deep cold sea with an area of 7 Pacific oceans. It looks like a dragon but not a dragon. It's like a snake but not a snake. It's 800 meters long, but its tendon is only as thick as a little finger. I don't think I need to tell you how strong this rope is, right? What about the fur? Isn't it used to make fur coats? Why do I feel that it's empty when I jump? The skin is even more amazing. It's taken from the mountain-splitting tiger clan of the Violent Mountain Range in the 8th layer of the realm of true martial arts. The mountain-splitting tiger clan dominates the Violent Mountain Range. Its skin is only 3 inches thick, but even a martial emperor realm expert's all-out attack would find it difficult to leave a mark on it. Lu Fei and Zhou Xian were speechless. They felt that Qin Guang would always be able to find a way to point out the thorns in the matter. Obviously what he said sounded like nonsense, but his expression was quite serious, like a teacher giving a lecture to his students. Finally relieved, Qin Guang asked them to fasten their seat belts made of the legendary tendon of the green li. He sat in the driver's seat and looked at the console in front of him. Well, this couldn't be called a console. As the ace of the modern ace pilots, Qin Guang felt that his knowledge was a bit limited. Other people's planes were operated with all kinds of instruments, but what was in front of him was a freaking bicycle head. In fact, it could also be called a halter. Next to the bicycle head, there were 2 buttons, quite simple and straightforward, written in traditional Chinese characters: accelerate and decelerate. Then it was over. There was no GPS, no altimeter and no speedometer. Oh yes, there was still a fuel gauge, but God knows how the fuel gauge was transmitted. It seemed that it was not connected by wire but by a pipe. Qin Guang speculated that it might be using the principle of pressure difference to transmit the liquid level in the fuel tank directly through the pipe, and then drive the scale in front of him. As for the scale, it was quite modern as well. On it was written 1 stone, 2 stones. Qin Guang said, "You win." If he remembered correctly, before he left he had thrown out the theory of the generator, but it seemed that the millions of years of electrodynamics in the realm of Zhenwu had been in vain. There was basically no progress. To be able to think of so many unorthodox ways to replace the electric transmission and forcibly create an airplane, it was really hard for the people in this world. Qin Guang twisted the bicycle head and it was really quite powerful. After a little test he knew that ordinary people could not twist it at all, even if they used all their strength. At least, it would take the strength of a martial artist at the peak of Pai Jin in the real world to be able to barely twist it. Qin Guang expressed his admiration. Sure enough, there was no electric transmission. This was purely relying on the pilot's own strength to work. If one wanted to fly an airplane, one had to first learn martial arts. With a loud rumbling sound, the airplane, which was rumored to be worth hundreds of millions of holy coins, was finally hijacked and took off. It was swaying and every part of the fuselage was ringing. It really looked like a broken bicycle in the real world. Legend had it that except for the bell it rang everywhere. Are you sure we want to fly 10 million miles at this speed? Why do I feel that this is not as fast as you racing? Luffy objected again. Don't worry, I haven't used my strength yet, have I? As Qin Guang spoke, the internal force in his elixir field circulated, and a tyrannical force poured from his feet straight into the two grooves under his feet. Something unexpected happened. The airplane, which had been clanking noisily, suddenly became as stable as Mount Tai, and there were no more strange sounds. Not only that, but the entire airplane was surrounded by a strange internal energy shield, which made the airplane, which was originally quite bad at aerodynamics, suddenly become bullet-shaped. The originally slow-rotating propellers seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. The speed of the airplane also broke through the sound barrier in the blink of an eye, and it was still accelerating. 2 times the speed of sound. 3 times the speed of sound. The three of them had no idea what was the principle behind it, so they could only express their admiration. This incident proved that the wisdom of humans was indeed incredible. Even in the realm of true martial where technology had stagnated, even if there was a lack of creativity, as long as there was a foundation, there would still be amazing people who came up with all kinds of wonderful inventions. The mayor of the Holy Emperor City had also neglected one thing. He didn't know that Qin Guang's strength was so strong that it made one's hair stand on end. He still understood him according to the mentality of an ordinary warrior. After all, Qin Guang had only used a slightly higher level of strength to conquer the Holy Emperor City. The airplane that was infused with a warrior's internal force was not as simple as simply increasing its speed. Instead, with the help of a very mysterious 8 trigrams device, it was enhanced in all aspects. Qin Guang infused the internal force of a martial sage, which was like giving a 7 or 8-year-old child a Barrett sniper rifle. When it was fired, even the strongest man would not be able to withstand it. 3 days later, the airplane of the three of them finally flew straight to the realm of true martial Holy Emperor City on the 9th floor. The way the three of them landed was also quite overbearing. As soon as Qin Guang's internal force dispersed, the airplane, which had been flying as fast as lightning, suddenly fell apart with a loud bang. Then the three of them landed in the most magnificent holy city in the entire realm of true martial with a loud bang, as if they were the rulers of the world. Chapter 1260. The three people fell from the sky and crashed into the sacred city, creating a big hole in the solid ground that could withstand a martial emperor's attack. Naturally, it's impossible for Chu Zijin and Lu Fei to remain unscathed after falling from such a high altitude. But with Qin Guang's support, the two of them were unscathed. No matter how powerful their descent was, it was as if they'd landed on a sponge with a fan attached to them. Qin Guang looked down at the huge square. The material of the diamond jade and the layout of the square, why did it feel a little familiar? He looked down at the cracked floor under him and bent down to grab a few pieces in his hand. Sure enough, this was the place. What is this? Why is it so cold? Chu Zijin's hand shook and she threw out a piece of debris, which hit the ground with a clang. Then she blew on her fingers, which were still emitting white smoke. Qin Guang said, "This is the frost diamond jade produced on the mountainside of the highest peak. It is the strongest stone in the entire realm of true martial. It is even harder than diamond on earth. In the realm of true martial arts, the weakest person who has the qualification and ability to climb to the mountainside of the highest peak to mine this stone must be a martial emperor. Moreover, it will take them half a month to slowly chisel out a 1-meter-long square stone. In addition, martial artists practice internal strength on this frost diamond jade is even more effective. In order to resist the invasion of the cold, the martial artist's internal strength will be stimulated to speed up its own operation, and the practice will be twice the result with half the effort. It can be called a peerless treasure in the realm of true martial. Zhou Xian asked, so powerful? Is it the same as Xiao Longnu's cold jade bed in the TV series? Qin Guang said proudly, I'm afraid that the effect of 10 cold jade beds is not as good as this frost diamond jade, not to mention this is such a big square. Lu Fei, who was engrossed in Qin Guang's boasting, suddenly jumped up. Even if she was wearing a pair of sneakers, the cold air still penetrated through her shoes and seeped into her bones. Why are you so clear about it? She asked. Qin Guang could not help but sigh. How can I not know? This is what I built in order to comprehend the inner force of the martial saint realm. Zhou Xian immediately responded, You mean we fell directly into the imperial palace of the true martial saint emperor city? Aha, you can say that. Qin Guang nodded and said as he looked at the 8 giant steel doors that were opening in the distance. After all, the sound of the 3 landing was too loud and the tremors were too strong. It was impossible for the guards of Saint Emperor City to not have any reaction. Who are you? How dare he barge into the Holy Land ancestral residence? Kill without mercy. In the blink of an eye, a giant man who was nearly 10 feet tall and clad in golden armor passed through one of the gates at an extremely terrifying speed, appearing in front of the 3 of them with an agile movement that did not match his body size at all. His momentum was ferocious and as fast as lightning, but when he stopped, his footsteps seemed to be very light. It was rather abrupt, and the transition between extreme movement and extreme stillness only took an instant. Just this simple action of his had displayed his strength, bringing along a powerful gale that blew over. Although Qin Guang's group of 3 stood on the spot, the shattered frosty Vajra jades were blown away by the gale. Lu Fei and Zhou Xian suddenly became nervous. This giant man gave them too much pressure. Even if he did not make any further movements, the aura of a powerhouse on his body could not be concealed. Yes, since the establishment of the holy city millions of years ago, you are the first group of madmen who dared to trespass here. Do you know that your current actions are provoking the entire true martial world? What you have destroyed is the historical site left by the only martial saint in the history of the true martial world. This is the holy place where the true martial saint emperor used to meditate and practice. Suddenly, a shrill voice came from behind them. The 3 of them looked back and saw a short man in black clothes standing there like a ghost. There were several bat-shaped black gas floating around him. In the time it took for the 2 of them to exchange a few words, more and more people appeared beside the 3 of them one after another. There were 13 of them and more guards were rushing over from afar. Everyone's face was filled with anger and they wanted to eat the 3 of them alive. They were like cats whose tails had been stepped on. The situation is not good, Zhou Xian said nervously. Zhou Xian said nervously. Each of these 13 people gave her the feeling that they were countless times stronger than the 4 S-class Protoss she had encountered before. If the 4 Protoss were S-level, then all of these 13 people were S-level or even higher. Lu Fei bit her thumb and said, Looks like we've brought you into a pit this time, Qin Guang. But forget it, it's just a game anyway. At most you'll be reset. It's the same even if you're not a player anymore. Zhou Xian and I will hold them back. Qin Guang, you are the strongest, so you should be able to escape. As she spoke, her body gradually surged with black gas. She was planning to overload her rubberization ability to simulate the legendary super wear-resistant and invincible silicone. Qin Guang raised his hand calmly. Don't worry, this is a small matter. A small matter? How can this be a small matter? The giant man was furious. His face changed dramatically and he raised his hand and rushed forward. Along with his movement, the huge martial arts arena shook. In the blink of an eye, the giant man appeared in front of the 3 of them. He raised his palm high and slapped down from above. On his palm, there was a golden phantom that was dozens of feet high. Along with his palm, there seemed to be thunder in the sky and the wind and clouds seemed to shake. What should we do? Lu Fei and Zhou Xian's beautiful faces changed. The giant man's seemingly simple palm was far more powerful than the one Qin Guang had displayed in front of them when the 3 of them had first entered Zhenwu Island. Boy die. In such a big Zhenwu realm there are no major events. Life and death are not major events, But destroying the relics left behind by the warrior sage is a major event. No one can save you. The countless guards behind the 13 strongest people shouted in unison. That's right. Anyone who dares to insult the warrior sage must be killed. At this time there were less than 1,000 people in the arena, but their momentum soared to the sky, like 10,000 horses galloping. However, Qin Guang was still calm. When the giant man's momentum reached its peak, he gently pointed his finger. A strong light shot out from his fingertip, but it did not hit the giant man. Instead it went straight to the palm phantom of the giant man in midair. There was a pop sound. The palm phantom, which seemed to cover the whole world, collapsed with a loud bang along with Qin Guang's finger. Normally, when the force of a strong man like the giant man was dispelled, there should be a lot of energy dissipating in all directions. However, after Qin Guang's telepathic finger, the scattered energy seemed to disappear without a trace. After a moment of silence, the giant man was stunned for a moment. Then he immediately realized that his move had been broken. He said in shock, "Impossible. This is the Buddha's palm, a unique skill passed down by the warrior sage himself. This is a supreme divine skill that surpasses the martial emperor's unique skill. How can it be broken by you like this?" Lu Fei and Chu Zijin did not react at first, but then they turned to look at Qin Guang. The two had heard Qin Guang introduce a lot of martial arts in the true martial world, but now they always felt that the Buddha's palm must have been invented by Qin Guang. This guy's bad taste in naming was simply unparalleled. Qin Guang coughed and did not dare to look back for fear of breaking his move. "This is a master, let's attack together." The giant man flew into a rage out of humiliation and waved his hands brazenly as he roared. As a peerless martial emperor who had been in the true martial world for thousands of years, he had never encountered such an opponent. He had fought with mysterious masters who had been hidden for many years. He had challenged countless sects when he was young. It took hundreds of years of hard work to climb from the lowest level of the true martial world from an ordinary martial artist step by step. Then he became one of the captains of the 9th Sacred City's Goding 13 Squadron. After spending hundreds of years, he finally understood the Goding captain-level unique skill, the Buddha's palm. He knew how terrible this unique skill created by the warrior sage was. At this time he could not accept the nightmare in front of him. On the other side, on the far wall of the square, there were 3 people wrapped in black cloaks. They were also shocked by this scene. Unbelievable. Even we can't break Shuang Nong's Buddha's palm so easily. Who is this person? We have never heard of such a young expert in thousands of years. The captains of the Goding 13 Squadron had already rushed forward and used their unique skills. In the Zhen Wuxia, people would draw their swords at the slightest disagreement. Moreover, it was easy to take someone's life at the slightest provocation. So, there was no such thing as outsiders can't interfere in a battle between powerhouses. Moreover, there was no such thing as bullying the weak with numbers. So, it was a popular saying in this world. Qin Guang was still quite calm. He even stood in the same place and did not move his feet. He just kept pointing his finger at them. No one would have thought that Chu Zijin and Lu Fei were the ones who were suffering the most. When the 2 girls heard the names of the moves, Pegasus Meteor Fist, Nebula Chains, Literally Flying Dagger, Overlord of Heaven and Earth Fist, 18 Suns as Kitchen Knives, Rising Dragon of Mount Lu and Cyan Wing Bat King Claw, they were on the verge of breaking down. They could not understand why these people always liked to shout out the names of their moves. It was obviously a very serious scene, but why did they always want to pull Qin Guang's ear and ask him, "What did you do in the past?" Chapter 1261. However, the people in the true martial domain were the ones who were more traumatized. Every member of the 13 teams of the Holy City's imperial court was a top-notch genius selected from millions of people in the entire true martial realm. Each of these 13 people's life experiences could even be written into a fantasy novel based on the template of the main character. Even some of the second-generation martial artists from aristocratic families or some of the elders of their families were the direct descendants of martial emperors. They had to go through unimaginable hardships if they wanted to become the leaders of the Holy City's Goding 13 squadrons. There had never been a lack of geniuses in the true martial realm. However, there were many geniuses in the reincarnation of countless generations. In the end, only 13 people could become members of the Goding 13 squadrons and inherit the 13 orthodoxies left behind by the true martial Holy Emperor. Moreover, no matter what kind of technique these martial artists had practiced before becoming a captain, as long as they came in contact with the orthodoxies of the martial holy emperor, they would get an incredible improvement. The reason was very simple. Although Qin Guang had not become a martial sage while he was cultivating martial arts in the holy city, he had already mastered over 100,000 types of martial arts. Even if he was a martial emperor like others, his realm was already incomparable to others. With his martial arts realm at that time, the techniques he created were far superior to the techniques of ordinary martial emperors. For millions of years, these techniques had been regarded as holy scriptures by millions of people in the true martial domain. They were respected and respected. However, the techniques of the 13 Guarding 13 Squadrons captains were broken so easily. How could they not be shocked? However, this guy's movements were very relaxed. He only used one finger every time. It was as if he was lifting his hand to brush off the dust on his shoulder. It should be known that each of these 13 people's attacks could easily destroy a big city if they hit the ground. However, it was as if they were hitting the air against this young man. Who are you? What is your purpose? Don't think that you can run amok in the holy city just because you can suppress us. You will become the enemy of the entire true martial domain if you don't give us an explanation for the destruction of the holy emperor's ruins. Do you know what kind of situation you will face at that time? The 13 captains finally stopped their bombardment after Qin Guang used one finger to force the other 3 to retreat. The giant man asked with a serious expression. The other 12 people stood behind him with flushed faces. Their expressions were solemn and extremely fearful. Qin Guang ignored him. Instead, he turned around and looked into the distance. The 3 men in black who had been standing on the city wall were shocked. One of them said in a hoarse voice, "He found us." Another person said, "Impossible. We're so far away and we've even activated the invisibility technique inherited from Lord Martial Sage. Unless Lord Martial Sage is here personally, it's impossible for him to see through us." The first person said, "You can't be so full of yourself. This isn't the first time we've been seen through." The third person also said, "That's right, it has already been several million years since the legendary martial saint left. If it wasn't for the fact that the various absolute arts he left behind are still being passed down, and the 9 great Saint Emperor cities he founded have been passed down from generation to generation, it would even make people wonder if he really exists." The first person was enraged. "How dare you? You dare to question the existence of the martial saint?" The third person panicked. "Don't accuse me randomly. It's not my idea. It's just that there have been some bad rumors coming from the holy city recently. Humph. It's just those useless chickens and dogs of the evil ghost faction playing tricks in the dark. If I catch them, I'll tear them into pieces," the old man with the hoarse voice said in a stern voice. It was obvious that he hated the evil ghost faction. But Lord Martial Sage has indeed left for several million years. No matter how high his martial arts are or how amazing his talent is, I'm afraid he can't resist the erosion of time. Now I'm afraid, the third man in black said in a low voice, and his mood was depressed. As soon as he said this, the 3 people suddenly became silent. The hoarse voice also became depressed. "If he's in the holy city at this time, I'm afraid the evil ghost faction and the man in front won't be so arrogant here." The second person also said, "Well, since we've been discovered, there's no need for us to hide anymore. The 3 of us are the 3 emperors of the holy city. We're recognized as the strongest people in the entire true martial domain. How can we lose to them?" A light breeze blew, and the 3 men in black flew over from the air and landed between the 13th captain and Qin Guang. "Lord, why are you here?" the man who was nearly 10 feet tall said in surprise. The hoarse voice took off his hood, revealing an extremely old face. "We've been here for a long time, but we've been watching from a distance." The group of captains looked ashamed when they heard this. They had enjoyed the best cultivation resources in the entire holy city, but now, they had been suppressed by a wild powerhouse who had appeared out of nowhere and could not fight back. They had even lost face in front of the 3 emperors. "Lord Subordinate," the old man waved his hand. "Don't worry. This mister has reached the highest realm of martial arts. It's normal that you're not his opponent." The captain of the 13th Guarding Squad was even more ashamed. Qin Guang looked at the 3 people with great interest. After a while, he pointed to the old man and said, "You're cultivating the longevity secret. The expression of the old man, who had forced himself to remain calm a moment ago, changed drastically. How did you know? Everyone in the true martial world knew that he was an expert in wood attribute martial arts. However, this lost technique was a secret technique of the 3 emperor clans of the Holy City. Only the clan lord was qualified to study and learn it when he inherited the throne of the Holy City. Moreover, this lost technique had been created by the Lord Martial Sage half a year before he had left the Holy City. He had given the longevity secret art and other cultivation techniques to his 3 servants. Moreover, he had repeatedly emphasized that they mustn't tell others the name of this cultivation technique. Even the old man's companions didn't know the name of the old man's technique. They didn't expect that the old man would know it. Qin Guang chuckled before turning to another person. The cultivation technique you're cultivating is called One Punch, and the overlord body you've cultivated is called Superman. The second man was so shocked that he took off his cloak. Who the hell are you? Qin Guang picked his ears. He couldn't remember how many times he had been asked this question today. He turned to the third man and said, "You're a blade user. Your blade technique and internal power are combined into one. It's called soul chopping blade, right?" The third man's reaction wasn't any better than the first 2. He took off his mask and looked at Qin Guang in horror. The third man was different from the first 2. He wore a strange skull mask on his face. However, it only covered half of his face. Lu Fei and Chu Zijin were youngsters after all. They almost burst into laughter. Isn't this guy wearing the mask of Ichigo Shinozaki in the anime Grim Reaper? Qin Guang coughed twice to remind them not to reveal their secret. Otherwise they would be embarrassed. How could he tell others that he had casually asked them to keep it a secret when he had created these martial arts? In fact, he hadn't thought much about it. He had simply felt that he had gone too far in making fun of them. So he felt sorry for himself. After all, this was a unique martial art left for the 3 great guards of the Holy City. It was known as the strongest unique martial art in the true martial domain. It would be passed down through the ages in the future. If this name were to spread, the millions of people in the true martial domain would talk about longevity secrets, soul chopping blade and One Punch Man. They would lose their minds. At that time he didn't expect that he would come back one day. Not only that, but he also brought Chu Zijin and Lu Fei with him. There were also tens of millions of people from the earth and God's race from the endless divine domain. When he looked at the 3 people again, he had a feeling in his heart. "I'm sorry, brother. I'm a sinner." Since he had played enough, it was time to reveal the mystery. Looking at the 16 people in front of him, Qin Guang took a step forward. "Since you asked so sincerely, take it from me. It's going to become a rocket team. Then I'll be merciful and tell you." Alas, he couldn't help it. This line was too deep. "Me. I'm the true martial saint you mentioned." As Qin Guang spoke, his imposing aura suddenly rose. A terrifying aura gushed out of his body and instantly enveloped the entire 9th Holy Emperor city. Tens of millions of people in the city were suppressed by this terrifying aura. Those who were below the martial emperor realm, who were closer to the center of the city, couldn't help but kneel on the ground. As for the 3 holy city emperors, the 13 captains of the Gotiai, and nearly 1,000 imperial guards in front of Qin Guang, they felt the most tyrannical pressure because they were the closest to Qin Guang. For a moment, nearly 1,000 guards couldn't withstand this pressure and knelt on the ground. After half a minute, only the 13 captains and the 3 holy city emperors were still standing. However, they were sweating profusely and their faces were pale. The legs of the 13 captains were trembling. It was as if they were carrying a heavy burden on their shoulders. As for the 3 holy city emperors, their condition was slightly better. They could still speak. After a short moment of shock, the old man who practiced the longevity incantation gnashed his teeth and said angrily, "Impossible. The holy emperor has passed away for millions of years. How can he still look like you?" One of the 3 holy city emperors also said, "That's right. We grew up worshipping the portrait of the martial saint. Even now we still worship him every day. How can we not know him? The martial saint is not as handsome as you are." Qin Guang's face turned pale. "I might have a fake fan." "Shut up. Looks are just skin deep. As a practitioner of martial arts, one must remember that only a body of divine martial arts can last forever. You don't need to know why I have millions of years of life. You just need to know that your martial saint is back." As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Guang finally unleashed his full power. An earth-shattering pressure came crashing down with a loud rumble. It was like the explosion of the nine heavens' mysterious thunder, and also like dark clouds pressing down on a city as if a mountain rain was about to come. Accompanied by a series of rumbling sounds of wind and thunder in Qin Guang's dantian, Qin Guang's body gradually floated into the air, and a huge shadow suddenly appeared above his head, which was his original appearance. This phantom was tens of thousands of feet tall and pierced through the clouds. Light surged on the phantom, making it look like a second sun in the sky. The holy city's 3 emperors and 13 captains could no longer resist the terrifying pressure, and they knelt down with a loud bang. They had lost their dignity and pride as the strongest experts of the true martial world when they had knelt down. Even more helplessly, no matter how unwilling and resentful they were, they could only bend their knees. This impulse of submission came from the depths of their souls and they couldn't resist it. The strange thing was that after these 16 people knelt down, the terrifying pressure on their bodies suddenly disappeared. It was replaced by a comfortable feeling as if their bodies were bathed in the warm sunshine. They even vaguely felt that their martial power, which had stagnated for a long time, was gradually growing again, and many doubts about martial arts that had been stuck in their hearts suddenly became clear. "Raise your heads and look," Qin Guang said slowly. His voice seemed so grand and distant as if it had come from thousands of miles away, but it also seemed as if it was whispering in people's ears. At this time, on the street outside the imperial palace of the Holy Emperor's inner city, countless people's voices of worship resounded one after another. Martial Saint's spirit has appeared. Martial Saint's longevity is boundless. This lowly one pays respect to Martial Saint. The holy city's 3 emperors, 13 captains, and the imperial guards behind them suddenly felt the pressure lighten. They slowly raised their heads and saw Qin Guang's shadow. Everything they saw was exactly the same as the time when Qin Guang had become a martial saint, and he had flown to the peak of the highest mountain. At that time he had also transformed into this shadow and then disappeared into thin air. This voice and smile had been seen countless times in the portrait. This person had fought against the heavens and was invincible. Moreover, his imposing manner had perfectly integrated with the heaven and earth of the true martial world. It seemed as if he was holding the sky in his palm and stepping on the earth. Since ancient times, only a martial saint had been able to reach this level. "Now, do you believe that I'm the true martial saint?" Looking at the dumbfounded crowd, Qin Guang had a Buddha-like smile on his face, which warmed people's hearts. "Yes, we believe it." Everyone responded in unison. How could they not believe it? Xiao Qin was able to casually break the ultimate techniques of the 13 captains, and he even pointed out the secret of the holy city's 3 emperors. However, the most important thing was still the strength he displayed. He could suppress tens of millions of people in the holy city by himself, and he could control the heaven and earth and transform into the shadow of the martial saint. Apart from the martial saint himself, there was no one else. In other words, even if this martial saint wasn't the previous one, it didn't matter. After millions of years, there was finally a second martial saint in the true martial world. After settling down, Qin Guang finally returned to the imperial palace of the 9th holy city, which he had been away from for millions of years. Then he had a good discussion with the 3 emperors and 13 captains about the so-called flying crane to the west, and paying respect to the martial saint's portrait. After being ridiculed, the 3 emperors finally recalled the martial saint's temperament, which was recorded in the ancient books they had read when they were young. It was exactly the same as the martial saint in the records. Qin Guang also wanted to understand what had happened in the true martial world for millions of years through these people. "You said that since I left, no one has been able to cultivate to the martial saint realm?" The longevity art old man sighed. "Sir, it's true. In these millions of years, there were more than 100 million people who had cultivated to the martial emperor realm. There were even more talented people who had created their own martial techniques. They could even surpass us who had inherited the martial saint's orthodoxy. However, even such geniuses couldn't cross the most difficult threshold in the end. Countless people fell halfway one after another. In the end, it made people despair." The bald man sighed as well. "In the first million years, we carried forward the many ideals that you passed down, Lord Saint Emperor. In the second million years, many convenient tools were invented and created. For example, the great invention that could change the way of travel in the true martial world, the airplane. Qin Guang waved his hand. Don't talk about your unlucky airplane. I'm really convinced. In the 3rd million years, the martial techniques that the martial saint had spread all over the world were flourishing day by day. Moreover, countless unique techniques were born on the basis of the secret treasures that you had left behind. Of course, the most tyrannical martial techniques are still the ultimate martial techniques that you had left in the imperial city. However, we are still incompetent. We have enjoyed so many conveniences, but we still can't take that step. The middle-aged man who practiced the soul-splitting saber also sighed. In view of this, the martial artists of the entire true martial world are getting more and more desperate. This isn't just a small number of people. Instead, it's a shadow that shrouds everyone's heart. The evil ghost faction that we mentioned earlier is an evil faction that has gradually risen in the last 100,000 years. Their purpose is to declare that our true martial world is a cage and all of us are just playthings. No matter how hard the people of the true martial world practice martial techniques, it's just a dream. Hearing those words, Qin Guang was startled. He felt that this argument sounded familiar. Wasn't this the same as the situation that those overlord-level powerhouses in the transient sea had discovered? Moreover, listening to the tone of the soul-splitting saber's successor, it seemed that he also approved of this. Then why do they hate the evil ghost faction so much? The longevity art old man looked at Qin Guang hesitantly. If the evil ghost faction only preaches this doctrine, we wouldn't have much of an opinion. However, they are targeting the martial saint. What do you mean? The longevity art old man finally said. They say that the reason why you, Sir Martial Sage, were able to become the only person in the entire Wuxia to transcend in billions of years is because this world was created for you alone. If we are playthings, then you, Sir Martial Sage, are the mastermind behind this amusement park. This is simply disrespectful to you. Therefore, in the last 100,000 years, the 9 of us in the true Martial Saint Emperor City have been chasing the evil ghost faction. However, we can't kill them all. Instead, they are getting stronger and stronger. Qin Guang's pupils shrank slightly. This time he was really shocked. If there was a chance, he really wanted to see what kind of genius the founder of the evil ghost faction was. He could completely see through the essence of the true martial world. If that person was able to cultivate to the martial saint realm within 100,000 years, perhaps he was still alive? Qin Guang stood up. I will stop here. Oh, by the way, take me to my palace. I want to see the old well in the inner courtyard of the palace. Unexpectedly, everyone's complexion changed as soon as he said this. Qin Guang asked suspiciously, "What's wrong?" The longevity art old man was very surprised. Reporting to the martial saint, the old well has been stolen. Chu Zijin and Lu Fei, who were standing behind Qin Guang, exclaimed in unison, "Are you kidding me? How can a well be stolen?" Chapter 1262. In this world there were people who stole jewelry, and there were also people who stole cultivation methods and secret manuals. There were also people who stole elixirs and secret recipes, and there were even people who stole. In this world there were people who robbed others of their property, their treasures, their houses, and even women. However, it was impossible for anyone to steal the well. What was there to steal from a well? What was the value of it? Besides, a well was not something that could be taken away in a small box. It was rooted in the ground. A normal person would not know how to steal it. Qin Guang was slightly startled. His mind was racing. At first he felt that it was impossible. But the surprised look of the old man didn't seem to be a joke. That meant it was true. He hadn't taken the so-called evil ghost faction seriously before. He had the strength of the true martial world. So, it didn't matter what kind of demons and monsters there were. He only needed to use his strength to break them. He could slap them with his palm, and even the most powerful genius would have to kneel on the ground and admit defeat. No one could resist his strength. As the only martial sage, when he entered this world, his whole mind had been integrated with the realm of true martial. It could almost be said that he was the realm of true martial and the realm of true martial was him. Perhaps it was impossible for him to know everything in the true martial world which spanned millions of miles. However, it was impossible for him to be unaware of the appearance of a powerhouse of the same level who could rival him in his own world. In fact, he would certainly be attracted by the aura. There seemed to be only a fine line between martial sage and martial sovereign, but it was like a natural moat. Between the two there was an absolute crushing of strength. They were not on the same plane. No matter how many martial sovereigns swarmed him, they would not be able to defeat him with one hand. But now he was really afraid of the Yin Ghost faction. They had their eyes on the ancient well. There was only one explanation for this. The Yin Ghost faction not only saw the truth that the realm of true martial was born because of him, but they also perceived the test task that all players participated in. Moreover, he didn't know what their purpose was, but they had stolen the most important task tool, the ancient well. Sir, it's like this. Although the evil ghost faction is getting stronger and stronger, our 9 great holy cities still have an absolute advantage. After all, almost all the martial emperors come from the holy cities' clans, and what they learn is the 10,000 laws orthodoxy that Lord Martial Sage left behind. They also listen to the holy cities' dispatch. But about a few decades ago, 2 extremely powerful experts suddenly appeared in the evil ghost faction. Even if it was only one of them, we would not be a match for them, let alone both of them at the same time. Qin Guang asked in surprise, even the 3 of you can't do it. The 3 of them looked at each other awkwardly. One of them touched his own head and said in an ashamed tone, although we have inherited your orthodoxy and are sitting on countless generous resources, we are indeed no match for those 2. Any one of them would be able to take on 3 of us at once without falling into a disadvantageous position. However, these 2 are inseparable. The longevity art old man also said, yes, we have been unable to fight back since these 2 appeared. Most of the time we have been holed up in the city, giving them the opportunity to take advantage of us. In recent years, the evil ghost faction's actions have become more and more unbridled. Even many members of the evil ghost faction are moving around in the Holy Emperor City. But we never expected that these audacious traitors would dare to sneak into the Imperial Palace a year ago. They even dug up the ancient well in the backyard of Lord Martial Sage's palace. The middle-aged man who practiced the soul-splitting saber also said angrily, that's not all. They didn't just steal the ancient well in our holy city. The 9 holy cities from the 1st to the 9th layer of the true martial domain were almost all murdered at the same time. The longevity art old man sighed. We thought that their behavior was just another provocation to us. So, we were trying to accumulate our strength and prepare for a counterattack. I didn't expect Sir Martial Saint to return after millions of years for the sake of these 9 ancient wells. It's easy to guess that they're plotting something before they take action. Chu Zijin, who was behind Qin Guang, muttered in a low voice, since the ancient wells in the 9 holy cities have been stolen, our previous worries are unnecessary. Anyway, no one can find the ancient well now. No matter which layer they are on, they can't jump down. I'm afraid this is actually part of the mission test. Qin Guang only listened, but he didn't think so. He didn't intend to point out Chu Zijin's speculation. No matter how smart she was just a player who participated in the game. She didn't know as many secrets as he did. She couldn't transcend the identity of a player and look at the whole thing from a higher point of view. She didn't know that there were people in the true martial domain who had insight into the ancient well in advance. It was a big blow to Qin Guang. The 3 emperors of the holy city also didn't know what Qin Guang was thinking. The bald man said happily, but now it's all good. Lord Martial Sage, you are here in person. No matter how powerful the 2 experts of the evil ghost faction are, they can't do anything. Qin Guang casually said, don't worry. This matter has to be considered in the long run. Tell them not to rush to attack the people of the evil ghost faction. Now that the entire true martial domain knows that I have returned, the evil ghost faction will certainly restrain themselves. I also want to have a good chat with these people and see what they are thinking. Since all the ancient wells had been stolen, they couldn't jump down for a while. Fortunately, Qin Guang and the other 2 settled down in the Imperial City. After millions of years, the Imperial Palace of the 9th Holy City finally welcomed its old master again. In any case, the news of his return had already been leaked by the huge phantom in the sky. So Qin Guang didn't need to hide it anymore. He also didn't intend to suppress the happiness of the countless martial artists and civilians of the true martial world. For a moment, the entire holy city was jubilant. Lanterns and streamers were hung everywhere. This jubilant atmosphere spread to all the major cities of the true martial domain like wildfire, along with the news of Lord Martial Sage's return. Led by the 9 great holy cities which had special information transmission channels, hundreds of billions of people in the true martial domain celebrated together. Accompanying Qin Guang, Lu Fei stood on the gate of the Imperial Palace. Looking at the lively celebration below, she couldn't help but sigh. How many stories have you left in this world? It's been millions of years. I don't know how many generations have passed. If it were on our Earth, it would be from the Yuanmo era to the modern era. But why do these people still worship you so much? Qin Guang chuckled. You don't understand, do you? This is called popularity. Lu Fei said again, F***CKU. In my opinion, since you have this ability, why don't you just drag out the people of the evil ghost faction that they've been talking about? Wouldn't you know where they've hidden the ancient well if you interrogate a few more people? It's not that simple. Let's go and have a good meal first. After that, we'll have a comfortable sleep. We've been flying in the sky for 3 days straight. And we've only had dry rations to eat. Don't you two feel tired? I feel sorry for you. As a result, Lu Fei and Chu Zijin fell asleep in the side room next to Qin Guang's palace. Then he quietly sneaked out. He wanted to look for the 3 emperors of the Holy City and ask for the portraits of those 2 experts that they had been talking about. He had a vague feeling that such powerful people weren't allowed to appear in the true martial domain. In his opinion, the 3 emperors of the Holy City were excellent people. Moreover, they were quite diligent. The youngest among them, the bald old man, had been practicing for thousands of years. So, there was no reason for him to be subdued by 2 people who had appeared out of nowhere. They had practiced the peerless divine technique that the old man had created with painstaking efforts before he had left. However, he hadn't expected that his plan would come to nothing. The 3 emperors had fought with those 2 people several times. However, they had never seen their appearance. The only thing they could confirm was that those 2 people weren't men. Chapter 1263. 2 Women. Qin Guang was even more shocked. It was not that he looked down on women, but the 3 emperors of the Holy City were suppressed by these 2 women. Before the appearance of these 2 women, no matter how powerful the evil ghost faction was, they could only drag out an ignoble existence under the tyrannical power of the 9 holy cities. Apart from that, in the millions of years of history, the 9 great holy cities were united, becoming the most powerful force that ruled over this world. They had also completely changed the situation in the past where every layer had countless cities fighting for their own interests. Even the 9th level, where experts gathered, the 10 great martial emperors, which had been stable for countless years, had been replaced by the holy city. The reason was simple. In the hundreds of thousands of years since Qin Guang's rise, he had used his strong means and power to suppress everyone. Anyway, he knew that people in this world would become heroes again after 18 years. He was too lazy to reason with people here. He followed the principle of those who obeyed him would prosper and those who disobeyed him would perish. After he killed 3 of the 10 great martial emperors, regardless of whether they were convinced or not, they decisively chose to surrender. He generously bestowed various cultivation methods that he had personally created to those who were smart enough to adapt to circumstances. As a result, more and more people came to rely on him. This was also the true reason why the 9 holy cities had been able to stand for millions of years without collapsing. All the geniuses and experts in the world were in his hands. Who could topple them? This meant that the 3 divine skills created by Qin Guang had the ability to suppress a world. Since he couldn't obtain any useful information, Qin Guang decided to take a nap. At this time, Qin Guang did not know that in the true martial Holy Emperor City on the 5th level, 2 girls were sneaking into the inner courtyard of the palace of the 5th Holy Emperor City under the cover of the night. Then the 2 of them looked at each other and saw the so-called ancient well, which was said to have been dug 10 feet into the ground, leaving only a well-shaped pit. Sweetheart, we are not in the wrong place, are we? This is the place in the mission prompt. What is going on? Is this a well? This is just a trap. Wu Miaowan lowered her voice and said carefully. Exin Qin checked her mission prompt again and again, looking confused. The 2 of them were lucky. The place where they landed was in the central plain of the 5th level of the true martial realm, not far from the 5th holy city. The 2 of them carefully explored along the way, passing through 3 small cities and a big city, and finally found the way to the 5th holy city. Wu Miaowan was the eldest disciple of the Thousand Flower Valley, and now the leader of the Thousand Flower Valley. She had mastered the unique skill of alchemy and healing. She had earned a lot of holy coins by diagnosing people along the way, so she did not have to worry about the entrance fee. What made them even happier was that since they came to True Martial Island, their internal strength had inexplicably increased with the passage. In addition, the two of them have now earned a lot of reward points through perfect performance in the jumping-off building quest system. At this time they have already reached the sea-level realm. The innate abilities of the players in the game, along with the martial arts foundation they had, allowed them to bring out strength that far surpassed their realm in the game in this world. Even if they were to compare themselves to the strongest martial tyrant in the 5th level, the difference between them would not be great. Thus, even though the two of them would occasionally run into some small fries along the way, it was still a daunting experience without any real danger. After entering the 5th holy city, they were much more restrained. After all, there were many experts here. It took a lot of effort for the two of them to finally sneak into the bedroom. Who would have thought that they would come up empty-handed? What should we do now? Wu Miaowan asked again. Xianxia looked distressed. You ask me, but who should I ask? Wu Miaowan suggested again. By the way, isn't the portrait of the true martial holy emperor Chen Guang? It seems like our minister is doing well in this world. Why don't we find a way to contact him? After a brief pondering, Xianxia rejected this idea. That's not appropriate. The true martial holy emperor only looks similar to Chen Guang, but we can't be certain that it's him. Besides, even if it's him, you know it's easy to meet the king of hell but difficult to deal with, right? I heard that the news of the Holy Emperor's return came from the innermost 9th level. He must be on the 9th level now. God knows how far away he is from us. How can we contact him? If we expose our identity, people may not believe us. What if the people down there have ulterior motives? What should we do? Wu Miaowan nodded, thinking that it made sense. The two of them had seen a lot in the past few days. Although the true martial saint emperor had countless fans in almost all cities, there were still many unfavorable rumors about him, especially the evil ghost sect, which had stirred up quite a bit of trouble. If the sinister spirit faction knew that there were two old acquaintances of the true martial holy emperor, they would swarm over as if they had found a treasure. There was no better hostage in the world. Therefore it was better to be safe than sorry. After some discussion, the two of them decided to take it slow. After spending a lot of effort, Xianxia and Wu Miaowan finally left the imperial city without anyone knowing. They found a hotel in the outer city and stayed there. The two of them were in a difficult position. They were worried that the other members of the Heaven Division would encounter a similar situation. They did not need to worry about martial artists like Aunt May who were at the Master Realm. However, the ordinary members of the division who were not as powerful as the two of them might encounter powerhouses that they could not afford to offend. In the dead of the night, the moon was dark and the wind was strong. The atmosphere of celebrating the return of the Holy Emperor was very festive. However, the undercurrents were surging in the 9 great holy cities. The members of the sinister spirit faction in the 9th holy city withdrew one after another that night. Those who could return to the next layer went far away. Those who couldn't return went to other cities in the 9th layer. Some of them were on the wanted list of the holy city. They were too eye-catching. So they simply ran deep into the mountains and forests. They planned to lie low for a while. The result of such a change was that the influence of the sinister spirit faction in the holy cities from the 8th layer didn't weaken. On the contrary, it strengthened. In addition, the influx of a large number of players finally attracted the attention of the natives of the true martial domain. The strength of these outsiders varied. Some were strong and some were weak. The powerful ones could even surpass the original suppression of the true martial domain. They could move freely in the first 5 layers with the strength of a martial emperor. Most of these people were Protoss players. Human players were like ants in their eyes. Not to mention these natives of the true martial domain, who were born with incomplete souls. They were simply rampaging. Just because of the entrance fee, they killed without saying a word. However, such people were the minority. Moreover, after seeing that the warriors of the true martial domain were not afraid of death, even the S-level Divine Emperor players became a lot more well-behaved. After all, even the most powerful people had to understand the principle that 2 fists couldn't fight against 4 hands. There was really an incident where an S-level Divine Emperor was killed by an entire city of people at the city gate. On the contrary, the Earthlings were relatively like fish in water. Firstly, the Earthlings had experienced a lot in real life. So, their emotional intelligence was relatively higher. Secondly, the human players were completely suppressed by the Protoss in the previous missions. The human players had rich experience in seeking survival in the cracks. After coming to the true martial domain, this strange place, they were well behaved like Xianxia and Wu Miaowan. Although the human players also suffered a lot of losses, and the number of casualties was more than the Protoss players, the survival rate of the human players was much higher. In addition, for large organizations like the Heavenly Division, only the two deputy directors Xianxia and Wu Miaowan were relatively unlucky. They were still wandering outside and did not meet their colleagues. Many other people had also met in 2s and 3s. The Heavenly Division, which was full of internal martial arts practitioners, was like a fish in water in the true martial domain. However, everyone had a tacit understanding not to expose their relationship with the suspected Holy Emperor, the head of the Heavenly Division, Qin Guang. However, a small number of human players thought that they had finally found an organization after seeing the portrait of the Holy Emperor on the street. They declared their relationship with the Holy Emperor in various ways. Even if Qin Guang did not know them, these people bragged that he was a relative or even a friend. If they were lucky enough to meet a city lord or a ruler with a good attitude, they would be tricked into believing them. Then they would be sent on a plane to the 9th holy city. However, most of them were unlucky. They were charged with the crime of despising the Holy Emperor and imprisoned in the water prison. Some people were really targeted by the evil ghost faction. They were inexplicably tied up and tortured. They told everything that happened on Earth, especially about Qin Guang. The result was that the philosophy that the evil ghost faction had always adhered to was once again confirmed. The only Holy Emperor was the root of all disasters. He enjoyed his life in the world called Earth, but he trapped hundreds of billions of people in this sealed world to be his puppets. This was simply shameful. The players who leaked the information did not end up well. They either died at the hands of the enraged members of the shady ghost faction or were imprisoned. There had not been any substantial progress on Qin Guang's side. However, the true martial domain, which was bustling with activity in the outside world, was in complete turmoil. The next morning, the 9 holy cities, which had been dormant for many years, finally launched a counterattack against the evil ghost faction. The members of the evil ghost faction who were proud of their tyrannical strength finally saw the terrifying strength of the 9 holy cities. In fact, the sacred city had only been afraid of those two peerless experts over the years. Lord Holy Emperor, we have tried to torture those captured traitors. However, it seems that they don't know where the ancient well is hidden. Now, I'm afraid we can only wait for the 2 top experts of the evil ghost faction to come out. Then Lord Holy Emperor will personally capture them. After 7 days, the people of the evil ghost faction had been hunted down. Even many martial artists who had fled to the deep mountains had been captured. However, there was still no news about the whereabouts of the ancient well. Qin Guang had a headache. Are the other 8 holy cities in the same situation? According to the report, it is the same. That's it for the time being. Send more people out of the city to search for the members of the evil ghost faction. Those 2 people will not be able to sit still and take action. He hadn't done nothing during these 7 days. He had commanded the 9 great holy cities to deploy their troops on one hand. On the other hand, he had used his martial sage realm to communicate with the true martial world. He had tried to find those 2 mysterious experts by sensing their aura. However, the result was not satisfactory. Even though he had filtered almost all the martial emperors in the entire true martial domain with his Qi, he still found nothing. It was as if those 2 people did not exist in this world from the beginning, just like him. In addition, many human players had been sent to the 9th holy city. Qin Guang did not meet them. He just asked one of the captains of the Gotiai 13 to settle them down and give them a safe place to stay. Now even he could not find the location of the ancient well. No one could jump into it. So it was useless to meet them. With Qin Guang's current identity and status, he was not in the mood to deal with all the human players. It was purely a waste of time. He was also too lazy to explain to everyone why he had become a holy emperor here. Chapter 1264. We can't go on like this. Why don't we find a way to contact Qin Guang tomorrow? I heard that although there are no telephones or mobile phones in this world, there are devices similar to telegrams. As long as we find a way to contact Qin Guang, there shouldn't be any problem. A few days later, Wu Miaowan sat helplessly on the bed in the guest room of the hotel. Her mood was quite gloomy. Xianxia was also very distressed. The 2 of them had stayed here for many days, but they had basically gained nothing. Even though the 2 of them had tried their best to inquire about the whereabouts of the ancient well mentioned in the mission description, they had found nothing. Even the people who came out of the palace of the fifth holy city were still secretive and didn't dare to say much. Alright, let's call more people tomorrow and go straight to the city lord. We have so many people. Nothing should go wrong. Xianxia came up with an idea. In these days, members of the Heaven Department had gathered in the fifth holy city one after another. Although everyone had changed their appearance, the members of the Heaven Department had already agreed on the secret code. They easily matched each other and gathered together. Up until now, there were at least 1,000 people in the inns, hotels and hostels of various sizes near the inn that the two of them were staying at. Although they were hidden in the dark, they were definitely a great force that couldn't be ignored in the fifth floor. The next morning, Xianxia and Wu Miaoan gathered everyone together and went straight to the city lord's mansion, which was built next to the palace. The city lord of the fifth holy city was a revered martial artist for many years. In fact, he already knew that there were many foreign guests in the city. However, the human players were relatively low-key and didn't easily cause trouble. So the city lord simply let them be and let them be. Now, the natives of the true martial domain roughly knew that the foreign guests were divided into two types. Some of them were arrogant and unruly. They would kill if they didn't agree with them. The other group was relatively weak, but their temper was relatively better. They were very easy to deal with. Xianxia and Wu Miaoan represented this group of people. They integrated quite well. Many people even brought many new things through communication and cooperation with the martial artists of the true martial domain. For example, some people had used their professional knowledge to improve the internal combustion engine train that had been used in the true martial realm for God knows how many years. Some people had even drawn the blueprint of an ink printer. This was also a great contribution. Qin Guang had brought great changes to the true martial world in the past. So, what about these millions of people? City Lord, to tell you the truth, we are all subordinates of the Sage Emperor in another world. We've also returned with the Saint Emperor, but for some reason we've ended up on the 5th floor. I wonder if the City Lord can help us think of a way to send us to the 9th sacred city to meet up with the Saint Emperor? The City Lord frowned slightly. We did send some people to the 9th holy city a few days ago, but the plane hasn't returned yet. It will take at least half a month. Moreover, airplanes are the most important weapons of our true martial world. There are no more than 20 airplanes in the entire 5th layer. But you have nearly 1,000 people here. So we don't have the strength to carry them even if we want to. Xianxia and Wu Miaoan looked at each other. The city lord's attitude was much better than what they had expected. At least he didn't reject them outright. Moreover, his attitude seemed very friendly. In that case, we'll have to trouble the city lord. After the plane returns, we'll have to trouble you to arrange it for us. We'll certainly put in a good word for the city lord in front of the Saint Emperor when we meet him. Thank you, Heroine Xian and Heroine Miaoan. By the way, this city also has a train to the 9th sacred city. Why don't you choose the train? There's no need for the train. It's too far away. It'll take many years even if we travel 1,000 miles in one day. The territory of the true martial world was too vast. According to Xianxia and Wu Miaoan's plan, only a few dozen people could take the plane to the 9th sacred city to meet up with Qin Guang. The rest of the people could only wait in the 5th sacred city to find the ancient well. The ancient well was a part of the mission. Even if it was lost now, it couldn't possibly disappear. They could find it sooner or later. Then there's no other way. However, I have to remind you that the lords of the 9th floor are chasing after the members of the evil ghost faction. The 9th floor is guarded by the Saint Emperor. The evil ghost faction's rascals are fleeing in all directions. They're in a constant state of anxiety. However, as far as I know, many experts of the evil ghost faction are fleeing from the upper floors. My strength as a revered martial artist is enough to suppress a region. However, I've heard that many senior revered martial artists who had wandered in the 6th and 7th floors have also returned here. This is an eventful period. Everyone should be careful. Xianxia cupped her hands towards the city lord. Thank you for reminding us. We'll be careful. At this time, Xianxia and Wu Miaoan also knew that although the aborigines of the true martial world practiced martial arts, they were restricted by the natural rules of this world. Once their strength surpassed the revered martial artist and reached the martial lord level, they couldn't stay in the 5th floor for long. If the person who came was only a revered martial artist, they wouldn't be a threat with the strength of the entire Heaven Division team. It should be known that the cultivation of these two people was only at the skin strength level in reality. However, there were two Master Realm seniors among the Heaven Division members who had gathered here. These two seniors' player level had already reached B rank. The strength they enjoyed in this world was far beyond that of ordinary martial artists. They could even fight against a martial king in the 7th floor, let alone a mere revered martial artist. After Xianxia and Wu Miaoan left, the advisor next to the city lord came over. "Sir, do we really have to arrange a plane for these two little girls?" The city lord rubbed his brows in distress. "What else can we do? The Saint Emperor has already issued an order. Anyone who takes the initiative to ask us for help and wants us to send them to the 9th Holy City must not be refused." The advisor was somewhat unwilling. "That's a pity. I saw that there were some experts beside those two little girls. I originally hoped that they could stay and help us fight against the evil ghost faction." The city lord said in a carefree manner. "There's no hurry. We can only send a few dozen people, right? Only a few people can leave, but there are still many who stay. Moreover, now that the Saint Emperor has returned, the evil ghost faction won't be arrogant for long. After this period of time, there's nothing to worry about. I heard that the situation in the 9th floor is gradually stabilizing. The experts in the 9 holy cities are also gradually coming down." The advisor said happily, "That's good. That's good." No one expected that on that afternoon, Xianxia and Wu Miaoan, who were originally resting in their room, would suddenly disappear. There was even a Master Realm senior guarding in front of their door, but he did not notice them at all. This matter was originally not a big deal in the 5th holy city. It was nothing more than the loss of 2 foreign guests. However, early in the morning, the city lord of the 5th holy city had already reported the matter of Xianxia and her team of nearly 1,000 people. The Saint Emperor, who originally did not care much about the other foreign guests, took this matter very seriously. He personally sent a telegram back, requesting that the 2 leading girls be sent to the 9th holy city as soon as possible. The city lord of the 5th holy city was about to take out a military plan that could not be used easily under normal circumstances, but in the end he heard that they were lost. He was scared out of his wits. The sky is overturned, bright and clear. In broad daylight these people are gone just like that. The city lord looked at the empty hotel room with a dark face. The experts of the Heaven Division were also confused. In order to guard against the God Clan and the evil ghost faction, and considering that Xianxia and Wu Miaoan were deputy ministers, the two of them had never lacked security since they met. Not to mention a martial venerable, even a martial emperor on the 8th floor would not be able to take them away without being noticed. What the hell was going on? Chapter 1265. About an hour later, the news reached the ears of Qin Guang, who was in the 9th holy city. He immediately decided to go to the 5th floor to find out the situation. He had only 2 guesses. Either it was the Protoss players or it was some kind of aborigines who could transcend the rules of the real martial domain. No matter which possibility it was not good news. If it was the Protoss, then the arrogant Protoss must have discovered the potential threat of a large human organization like Tian. This meant that Xianxia and Wu Miaoan would be immediately reset. Tian, which had been operating well under the management of the two, would suffer heavy losses. It also meant that from now on, the Protoss would selectively attack other high-level personnel in Tian. The rest of the world's major organizations would also be in danger. This possibility was not high. After all, the Protoss players that Qin Guang had come into contact with so far were quite arrogant. They looked down on human players. Why would an elephant specifically look for a bigger ant to step on in order to prevent the ants in its eyes from becoming stronger? But if it was the aborigines of the real martial domain, then there was only one possibility. The other party was from the evil ghost faction. Xianxia and Wu Miaoan led a team to the 5th holy city's city lord's mansion to negotiate and expose their identity. The evil ghost faction guessed the relationship between the two and himself. They planned to capture the two to threaten him. Therefore the other party only took them away and did not kill them on the spot. This was also not good news. For a long time only Qin Guang could transcend the rules of the real martial domain. But now the people of the evil ghost faction had this ability. It could only further prove that the philosophy of the evil ghost faction had always been correct. There was a vast and boundless plain in the 5th layer of the true martial world. And there was a towering 10,000-meter tall mountain in this vast plain. The mountain was covered with snow all year round. The journey from the foot of the mountain to the top was extremely difficult. But if Qin Guang was here, he could see with his eyesight that there were many people with white clothes and white pants on the snowy mountain. They had white hair and were running on the snowy ground. In the col halfway up the mountain there was a large building built with white bricks. Under this almost perfect cover, not many people would have thought that there was such a huge city in the mountains hidden here. This was the headquarters of the Yin Ghost faction in the fifth layer of the true martial world. The evil ghost faction, which had been developing for 100,000 years, seemed to be struggling under the continuous strangulation of the 9 great holy cities, but there were always some amazing talents that appeared after a generation and fiercely raised the power of the evil ghost faction. For example, the White City in the snowy mountains was built by the invincible martial venerable who dominated the fifth layer. No one was allowed to defy the rules of the true martial world. So this revered martial artist was invincible among his peers. He was even able to challenge Wu Ba. In fact, he had killed a Wu Ba expert more than once when he had rushed to the 6th floor. However, he eventually returned here and stirred up a bloody storm on the 5th level. He led the insidious ghost faction to suppress the holy city on the 5th level and built White City secretly. Not until he grew old after dominating for nearly 1,000 years did the 5th holy city turn from defense to offense and take the initiative. At this time, Xin Qin and Wu Miaoan were imprisoned in the ice prison of this White City. There was only one window in the entire cell. The railing on the window was made of ice that would not melt for thousands of years. Even a full blow from a martial emperor couldn't leave any mark on it. With Xin Qin and Wu Miaoan's abilities, it was impossible for them to escape. However, the ones who made them give up resisting were the 2 middle-aged women standing in front of them. At this moment, Xin Qin and Wu Miaoan couldn't describe their feelings at all. When they were captured, the 2 of them thought that they were dead meat. However, after they arrived here, the 2 little girls almost burst into tears after the 2 mysterious people in front of them took off their cloaks that covered their faces. If it weren't for the fact that they had become the Vice Minister of Heaven and also held the position of Sect Master, the 2 young girls had long been tempered to be much more tenacious. The 2 of them really would have completely lost control. Master, why are you here? Xin Qin's lips trembled as she looked at the cold and indifferent nun in front of her. After a while she said such a sentence. Wu Miaoan swallowed her saliva and said in a trembling voice, Master? Aren't you dead? The 2 of them had seen their masters die with their own eyes, but now the 2 masters were standing in front of them alive. Their voices and smiles couldn't be faked. The scene made them feel like they were in a dream and they didn't even want to wake up. It had been about 30 seconds since the 2 masters took off their masks. At first, the 2 little girls thought they were dreaming. Then they pinched their thighs hard to make sure that they were awake. Then they asked these 2 questions half tentatively and half out of control. Abbess Xin Yuan and Wu Qingming looked at each other in surprise, but they were also very confused. Originally, they planned to interrogate the 2 foreign women on the spot and find out the relationship between them and the mastermind, Saint Emperor Zhen Wu. However, the behavior of these 2 people seemed a little strange, which made the 2 pillars of the evil ghost sect who had dominated the world for decades feel a little confused. Did they catch the wrong people? Or maybe the information was wrong. These 2 foreign guests had nothing to do with the Saint Emperor Zhen Wu at all. Were they just 2 idiots who talked nonsense? In the end, the 2 changed their minds at the last minute. Without asking a word, they turned around and left, leaving Xin Qin and Wu Miaoan looking at each other. After a long time, the 2 of them came to their senses and looked at each other blankly for more than 10 seconds. Then Xin Qin asked first, It seems that the masters don't recognize us? Wu Miaoan also thought about it. It seems so. Xin Qin slapped her forehead. Sai, what the hell is going on? I feel so confused now. My mind is in a mess. Wu Miaoan looked up at the sky. I don't understand either. It was clearly said that this was just a game. No matter how real this game is, it is just a game. But why did we meet people who are exactly the same as Master here? I don't understand. I don't understand either. I've never wanted to take a loudspeaker to the ear of the swollen chrysanthemum chief and ask him loudly what the hell is going on. Xin Qin let out an inexplicable sigh. Then she immediately realized something and exclaimed, That's strange. What's the title of swollen chrysanthemum chief? Isn't Qin Guang the minister? Wu Miaoan was also puzzled. It's quite strange. I think it sounds familiar too. I think I've heard it somewhere before, but I can't remember where. That's impossible. Both of us have photographic memories since we were young. How can we not even remember what Qinguang is called? There are too many things that are impossible. This is just a small matter. The important thing is, why did the masters appear here? Why don't they remember us? Also, are they the same person as Master? Is it possible that this is just a nightmare for us, or an inner demon left behind by our weak martial arts foundation? Exin Qing patted Wu Miaowan's shoulder. Stop joking. How can the two of us meet an inner demon at the same time? Could it be that our inner demons are telepathic? Wu Miaowan shrugged. That's true. Forget it. It seems that the two of us are in trouble this time. However, Qinguang is a Beyond S class after all. Even if we are reset, he can at least tell us what happened after we get out. We won't have as many regrets as ordinary players. That's probably the only way. The doubts in their minds suddenly became greater, but in the end they could not come to any conclusion. They could only come up with nothing. Outside the ice prison, although Abbess Exin Qing and Wu Qingming were separated by 3 layers of ice walls, they could still hear the conversation between the 2 girls inside clearly. Wu Qingming shook her flowery clothes and said with a playful expression, "Abbess, what do you think about what these 2 little girls said?" Abbess Exin Qing shook her horsetail whisk and said coldly, "Playing tricks. It's inexplicable." However, Wu Qingming frowned. "Even so, in my eyes, when these 2 people called us master, they didn't seem to be faking it. They seemed to be sincere." Abbess Exin Qing was speechless. She and Wu Qingming had known each other for many years and knew each other very well. Wu Qingming's medical skills could be said to be amazing. Under her constant deduction and improvement, her self-created myriad flower art was enough to suppress the many divine arts left by the true martial holy emperor. However, these were not what Wu Qingming was best at. She had a pair of eyes that could see through people's hearts. She was best at figuring out people's hearts by observing their words and expressions. At the same time, she was also very good at using words to spy on others and shake them. This was also the reason why the Evil Ghost faction could go against the trend in the past few decades after the 2 of them joined the Evil Ghost faction. It was because of Wu Qingming's ability to read people. She reorganized the teachings of the Evil Ghost faction and made them into teaching materials. First, she trained a large group of subordinates who were both eloquent and skilled in martial arts. Then these people secretly preached and expanded their influence. The way it operated was somewhat similar to the pyramid selling in the real world. Now that Wu Qingming said so, it proved that the 2 of them did not seem to be faking it. However, the 2 of them still didn't understand why. In their memory, they were born and grew up here. They were the natives of the true martial domain. It was only in this life that they suddenly became enlightened. From the first layer of the true martial domain, they had worked hard all the way until they achieved their current strength and status. Because of their feelings, they became the pillar of the so-called Evil Ghost faction. Others called them the Evil Ghost faction. Although they recognized this name, deep in their hearts, they firmly believed that they were the righteous side. The 2 of them had never had a real disciple, let alone a disciple of an outsider from the outer world. "Forget it, we will go and interrogate them tomorrow." Abbess Exin Qing finally took this principle. Wu Qingming nodded. "Well, we have to ask them tomorrow no matter what. The true martial holy emperor should also be able to transcend the suppression of the true martial domain. However, it will take at least a few days to reach the 5th layer from the 9th layer. Moreover, it is not so easy to find our white town." Chapter 1266. However, Qinguang was sitting on a new type of plane that had been manufactured with the best materials of the 9th holy city. This plane was pitch black in color and was emitting a strange light. It wasn't made of the skin of a strange beast, nor was it made of the beams of mysterious wood. Instead, it was made of a very special kind of metal. It was very cold to the touch. In fact, it would condense into frost in a short time if water was sprinkled on it. However, this frost couldn't adhere to the plane's fuselage. The frost would fall off with a slight breeze. This material was extremely smooth. In fact, it even had the special effect of repelling and resisting air. Moreover, it was extremely tough and had good toughness. It could be restored by its toughness and the memory of the metal as long as it wasn't thoroughly destroyed after it had been shaped. It could be said to be an excellent material for making the plane's fuselage. In fact, it was even more perfect than the most advanced special alloys on Earth. According to the three emperors of the Holy City, this alloy had been extracted from a pitch-black boulder at the foot of the highest peak where Qin Guang had meditated for thousands of years in the past. Millions of years ago, Qin Guang had meditated here before he had become a martial sage. He had practiced his martial power. His internal energy had stimulated the yin and yang energy in the true martial world to circulate endlessly. And it had swept through the black boulder over and over again. This ordinary black boulder had gained spirituality after the martial sage had left. It had even absorbed the yin and yang energy on its own. It had grown and brewed by itself for millions of years. Finally, a large piece of this magical metal had been brewed inside it. And it had been discovered by a martial emperor who had happened to pass by several hundred years ago. More than 100 martial emperors had been led by 3 martial emperors. They had spent more than half a year in order to mine and smelt this ore. And they had finally forged its main body into the fuselage of the plane. The leftover bits and pieces had been forged into dozens of divine weapons. And they had been used to reward the many powerhouses who had participated in the mining and smelting of this ore. The longevity art old man had a proud and worshipful look on his face when he had told Qin Guang about the origin of this plane's material. However, Qin Guang had wanted to laugh. How could I tell you that there was such a smart stone that could absorb the yin and yang energy on its own? It was clear that when the old man was meditating, the 7 tendons and 8 meridians of his body automatically opened up. Well, this was a more sophisticated way of saying it. To put it more simply, as one's cultivation deepened, the flow of qi in one's body would automatically evolve. Whether it was tendons, veins, bones, or internal organs, they would automatically get rid of the impurities and retain the good. To put it more simply, it was actually the gas excreted from one's buttocks while sitting on a rock while meditating. What did it feel like to fly a plane made of black iron made from his own fart? Qin had said, flying a plane made of black iron. Fortunately, he didn't let Zhou Xian and Lu Fei board the plane as well. Otherwise, he really couldn't afford to lose face. As for the longevity Jew old man, he had a look of admiration on his face when he had talked about the origin of this so-called black iron metal. Especially when he had mentioned that this custom-made plane had been the noblest ride in the entire Wuxia for a long time. He had felt a bit of sympathy for these people. However, he had a good character. He didn't say it out loud. He would let this matter be an eternal secret in the true martial realm. At least everyone could keep good memories. About a day and a half later, Qin Guang flew to the sky of the 5th sacred city at a very fast speed. He was much earlier than the estimated time of Abbas Xn Yuan and others. Sure enough, you get what you pay for. This special metal that had been broken by his own fart for thousands of years and then brewed for millions of years was really powerful. Its flying speed was incomparable to the previous broken goods. It could withstand more internal energy, and it could even land smoothly after arriving at the destination. When he got off the plane, Qin Guang couldn't help but pat the fuselage of the plane gently. Along the way, he had a feeling that he and the plane were connected. It was as if they could be integrated into one. He could control it as if it had become a part of his body. However, he immediately remembered the origin of the black iron. He felt a chill. He turned his head and slammed a hole on the ground. Then he hid the plane in it and turned away. He really didn't want to admit that it was really a part of his body in a sense. A dignified Saint Emperor personally leading an expedition to the 5th floor was a matter that would shake the entire true martial realm. However, Qin Guang did not inform anyone. He chose to arrive by himself and sneak into the 5th sacred city. The only people who knew that he had left the 9th sacred city were the old man Zhou Xian and Lu Fei, who personally sent the plane to him. Qin Guang's whole face was hidden under the dark bamboo hat. He walked slowly on the street. At this time, his attire was not very eye-catching. The style of masked swordsman was popular in the true martial realm. Along the way, Qin Guang found many outsiders in the eyes of others and players in his eyes in the crowd on the street. Qin Guang's judgment wasn't based on their attire, but purely on the differences in speech, behavior, and temperament between the players and the natives of the true force domain. Moreover, with Qin Guang's eyes, he could directly see the differences in the souls of the two groups of people. He didn't see a single Protoss player in the city. Presumably, these people didn't want to bow down to the natives of the true force domain. However, they couldn't stand the enemy's relentless pursuit of death. So they simply didn't enter the city and sought peace and quiet. By now, the Protoss players must have already known that the ancient well had been lost. They must also be looking for it. They must have planned to hide the ancient well after finding it and cut off the escape route of the ordinary players. Qin Guang didn't go to the Lord of the Fifth Holy City. He also didn't meet up with the members of the Heaven Division who were staying in the Fifth Holy City, thinking of ways to rescue and find the two deputy ministers. Instead, he chose to wander alone, seemingly aimlessly. He even forcibly suppressed the aura that he exuded to the level of an ordinary revered martial artist. For the next 3 days, he lingered in the big taverns and tea-houses of the Fifth Holy City like an ordinary vagabond. He drank wine everywhere, chatted with people, and threw out some remarks that echoed the doctrine of the Dark Ghost faction. At night, he would go to the locations of the suspicious people that he had recorded during the day. He would first use words to probe and interrogate them. Once he found any signs, he would decisively use the soul-searching technique. However, even though he had captured quite a few members of the Shady Ghost sect, their rank seemed to be very low. These people did not even know who was in charge of the Fifth Sacred City, let alone find out where Xin Qin and Wu Miaoan had been captured. Hard work paid off. On the third night, he finally found the person he was waiting for. He was a high-level lobbyist of the Dark Ghost faction hiding in the Fifth Holy City. He could wear out iron shoes in fruitless searching, but he found it by chance without even looking for it. He didn't expect that the other party would take the initiative to send himself to him after he couldn't find him after so much effort. "Mr. Dang, have you heard of the Dark Ghost faction?" The owner of one of the taverns that he frequented quietly found the hotel where he was staying. He knocked on the door and asked straightforwardly. Qin Guang pretended to be stunned at first. Then he deliberately looked at the owner with fear. He shook his head fiercely as if he was hiding something. "I don't know what you're talking about." Chapter 1267. This boss had been hiding in the Fifth Sacred City for hundreds of years. He had long been a core figure of the evil ghost faction in the fifth layer of the true martial domain. Since the rise of Wu Qingming, her lectures had been widely spread in the evil ghost faction. This tavern owner was the first person to learn the evil ghost faction's speech technique to the Great Realm. The reason was very simple. To put it bluntly, the tavern in this world was equivalent to the bar in the real world. To open a bar, one had to deal with people from all walks of life. One had to go through the 3 paths of black, white, and gray. Such a person, who had lived for hundreds of years with his own unique skills, was already a genius among geniuses. After learning professional speaking skills, his eyes were even more insightful. At this time in his eyes, Qin Guang was hesitant to speak. It was clear that he had heard about the evil ghost faction long ago. Moreover, he was very interested in it. "Mr. Dang, let's not resort to insinuations in front of an honest person. I heard you talking to someone in my tavern at noon. You talked about why there hasn't been a second martial sage in the true martial world for millions of years. Many of your views coincide with the teachings of the evil ghost faction. I know you are afraid of the evil ghost faction. But now is different from the past. The 9 sacred cities are strong in appearance but weak in reality. There is nothing to worry about. If it weren't for the sudden return of the martial sage and the foreign guests, the martial emperors in the sacred city would not be a match for the 2 saints of the evil ghost faction. We are on the 5th layer here. No matter how powerful the martial sage is, he can't control us. Don't look at the Lord of the 5th sacred city. He can only rely on us to live. If we want, we can find a master to send him to reincarnation at any time. It's just a matter of whether we want to do it or not. The most powerful revered martial artist in the true martial domain is not up there." As he said, the tavern owner pointed to the direction of the 6th layer. He meant that the most powerful revered martial artist was not cultivating in the 6th and 7th layers. Instead, he was on the 5th layer. Moreover, he was a member of the evil ghost faction. Qin Guang looked a little shaken as he said, "But I heard that martial saints can bypass the restrictions and come from the 9th floor to the 5th floor. With the strength of a martial saint, when the time comes, I'm afraid that these people you mentioned will be easily destroyed, right?" The owner of the tavern did not think much of it. What kind of joke is this? A martial sage only returns once every several million years. How far is the journey from the 9th floor to our 5th floor? Do you think that a martial sage would be so bored that he would come here? Qin Guang nodded with a look of understanding. "But although I know about the evil ghost faction, why do you like me?" The tavern owner chuckled. "Mr. Dang, many of your ideas coincide with the teachings of my shady ghost faction. I also heard that you fought with a venerable martial artist named Qing Long in the Red Maple Tavern the other day. When Qin Guang heard this, he nodded proudly. That rascal called Qing Long thinks that he can do whatever he wants in the fifth sacred city just because he's a martial honor. I don't like him, so I just punished him. I'm afraid it's not like that, right? I heard that Mr. Dang only used one palm to suppress Qing Long to the ground and he couldn't move. After another palm, his legs were shattered and his cultivation was completely destroyed. I'm afraid this can't be called a punishment. Qin Guang suddenly became vigilant. Are you here to stand up for him? The tavern owner shook his head fiercely. Qing Long and I are just acquaintances. Why should I stand up for him? However, Qing Long is a well-known veteran expert in the fifth sacred city, but he was destroyed by you with 2 palm strikes. In my opinion, Mr. Dang, you are qualified to be ranked in the top of the martial honor list. You can be regarded as one of the strongest 100 martial honors. And my shady ghost faction needs a young hero like you. After all, those who can be ranked in the martial honor list can at least become martial emperor in the future, or even a martial emperor. Hearing the tavern owner talk about the martial honor list in a respectful tone, Qin Guang did not feel proud at all. He even wanted to laugh. What the hell is this? Although martial honors can show off in the 5th level, once they go up they are not worth mentioning at all. Is it necessary to make a list of the strongest 100 people? Are you kidding me? Forget it, I'm a meat-eater who doesn't understand the suffering of the lower class. Qin Guang sighed in his heart. He felt that he should not laugh at those who had dreams. What if I don't agree? He did not rush to agree but asked in a half-probing and half-serious manner. The tavern owner snorted coldly. Then I'm sorry. I'm one of the 4 giants of the Shady Ghost faction in the 5th sacred city. My identity must be completely kept a secret. Although you were able to defeat the dragon-riding martial venerable with 2 palms, I have brought 7 people from the top 100 of the martial venerable leaderboard. As for myself, I'm sorry, I'm Yi Haolong, who is ranked 6th on the martial venerable leaderboard. Yi Haolong waved his hand, and 7 people suddenly stood up from all over Qin Guang's room. Including the tavern owner, there were a total of 8 martial honors surrounding Qin Guang. Qin Guang smiled bitterly and said helplessly, "It seems that I have to agree." "That's right, you have no choice." Qin Guang pretended to be very afraid, "But I heard that the Shady Ghost faction is not very fair and peaceful. You won't kill people at will, right?" Yi Haolong smiled proudly when he heard that. "Of course, who said that we're going to kill you? However, if you don't agree, we will use a more forceful method to invite you to the Shady Ghost Faction's school. We will let you eat and live with many students and attend classes every day. Believe me, in less than 3 to 5 years, you will definitely recognize our Shady Ghost Faction. At that time, without my persuasion, you will take the initiative to find an expert that you think highly of or your relatives and friends to join our faction." At this moment, Qin Guang finally understood what was going on. Wasn't this the standard method of selling something? No wonder the old man of longevity Zhu said that the Shady Ghost faction had suddenly developed a lot in recent decades. At first he thought that it was because of the 2 peerless experts, but he didn't expect that there was such a trick behind it. Qin Guang could only express admiration in his heart, and he was even more curious about it. After he nodded to agree, Yi Haolong immediately changed his face and came forward very enthusiastically. He put his hand on Qin Guang's shoulder and chatted with him very familiarly. Then he took him directly to the eastern district of the 5th holy city. In modern society, the eastern district was equivalent to a rich area. In the huge 5th holy city, any manor in the eastern district covered an area of more than 100 acres. Along the way they also encountered the city guards of the 5th holy city, but surprisingly, these city guards turned a blind eye to them and directly let them go. Hearing those words, Qin Guang was shocked. After all, the 9 holy cities had announced a late-night martial law. When the city guards saw Yi Haolong at night, not only did they not come up to interrogate and investigate, but they deliberately changed the direction and let him go. This could only mean one thing: the forces of the Shady Ghost faction had already infiltrated the official forces of the 9 holy cities. Forget it, since I bumped into this matter I can't ignore it. When I find Xin Qin and Wu Miaoan, I will destroy this Shady Ghost faction. At this moment Qin Guang made up his mind. Xiao Dang, you are also an amazingly talented martial artist. I can see that you have such strength in this life even though you are less than 100 years old. With your wisdom and talent, You have a good chance to become a martial emperor or even a martial sovereign in the future. However, I don't know if you have ever thought that even if you have strong strength, we will never be able to transcend the true martial world like that martial sage Chen Guang. No matter how we come back to life, come back to life, come back to life, come back to life again and again. Yi Haolong had already begun to chat with Chen Guang on the street halfway. Chen Guang deeply agreed with his reasoning. Of course, I know this is the case. Except for myself, trillions of people in the whole world are like this. With Yi Haolong's realm, he should not have realized these things. Chen Guang thought it was probably the words written in the shady ghost teaching materials for him. It was all a trick. First, he used big concepts to fundamentally shake the worldview of the newcomers. Then he carefully communicated with them. In short, it was brainwashing. Indeed, I vaguely remember some things about my previous life. Although I can't remember the specific name, I should have been a martial sovereign in my previous life. In this life, my cultivation speed is faster than in the previous life, and my foundation is more solid. However, I have no confidence to break through the martial sovereign and become a martial sage. Yi Haolong sneered, "It's right that you have no confidence. Humph, the whole real martial world is a bunch of untouchables." Untouchables? Chen Guang pretended to be dissatisfied. "If you say that we revered martial artists and the martial artists below us are untouchables, I will accept it. However, are martial sovereigns also untouchables?" Yi Haolong nodded with hatred. "Of course. Martial sovereigns are nothing more than untouchables of a higher level. It's just like the chickens and dogs we raise. Those that are beautiful have pure bloodlines and are good at fighting can live in prettier pens and dog cages. Those that are not as good will be placed in dirty and messy cages. That's all." "How is this possible?" Chen Guang continued to be dissatisfied. "Why is it not possible? You have already realized it, but you don't want to admit it. Well, we have arrived. Coincidentally, there is a class today. Why don't you listen to it?" Yi Haolong did not say anything else. Instead, he brought Chen Guang to the entrance of a huge manor. The group went inside, passed through a long corridor and went deep underground. What appeared in front of Chen Guang was a splendidly decorated hall. The hall was brightly lit, and the air was filled with a comfortable and relaxing light fragrance. Under the hall sat a large group of martial artists wearing all kinds of clothes. Chen Guang looked around. Most of the people sitting in the crowd were martial monarchs and heroes below revered martial artists. Yi Haolong patted Chen Guang's shoulder. "Xiao Dang, your strength should be in the top 3 among the new students. Your seat is in the front row. Go and take a seat first." Following Yi Haolong's guidance, Chen Guang passed through the crowd under the envious and jealous gazes of the surrounding people. He sat on the 3 gilded soft chairs at the front of the first row. On the bench, there were already 2 beautiful women wearing silk clothes sitting next to him. They were looking at him with ingratiating gazes. With Chen Guang's cultivation and eyesight, he could see that the 2 women were still virgins. They were martial monarchs, and their appearance was even more beautiful. The treatment of the evil ghost sect was really not worth mentioning. They took good care of him, a stupid and cute newcomer, in all aspects. After arranging for Chen Guang to sit down, Yi Haolong greeted the other people in the hall, and then said to Chen Guang, "Xiao Dang, you are lucky. Our main lecturer today is a senior martial lord from a higher level. He is also a top figure on the list of martial lords. Listening to him is better than reading books for 10 years. "Really? Martial lords can't stay in the 5th level for a long time, can they?" Chen Guang asked. Yi Haolong chuckled and said, "You don't understand. When you finish all the courses and become our real family, you will know why our shady ghost sect has been growing stronger and stronger under the eyes of the 9 holy cities for decades." Chapter 1268. Watching Yi Haolong leave with satisfaction, Chen Guang hesitated for a few seconds. Finally, he sighed slightly and changed his mind. Originally, he planned to seize the evil ghost faction's lair in the 5th sacred city. Then he would completely suppress the situation with a thunderous force. He would capture the person in charge here and directly search his soul. No matter how tight his mouth was, he could only confess obediently. But now he didn't intend to do it immediately. Instead, he sat down and looked at this senior martial overlord from the 6th layer, who was boasted by Yi Haolong to be able to break through the limits of the true martial domain. What was so great about him? The most important thing was that Qin Guang had unknowingly developed a strong curiosity about how that person would give the lecture. As the saying goes, curiosity killed the cat. Qin Guang felt that he was the strongest cat in the entire true martial domain. He would certainly not be killed by curiosity. So, it was not a big deal to be a little curious. Although the so-called main lecturer had not appeared for a long time, the huge hall of the venue was not noisy. On the contrary, it was exceptionally quiet. Only a few of the most respected martial overlords sitting in the front row would laugh from time to time. There were 2 female martial overlords sitting around Qin Guang. One of them tried to whisper something in Qin Guang's ear in a very intimate tone. The other one was very careful to peel the skin of a crystal grape in front of her. However, Qin Guang didn't smile at this time. He didn't give these 2 a chance to get close to him. He just closed his eyes and rested, not paying attention to the outside world. In his life he had seen many kinds of beautiful women. He had already become very picky. This kind of beauty arranged for him by others. Sorry, I don't like it. Moreover, even if the women in the true martial domain were virgins in this life, only God knew how many reincarnations they had experienced in their long lives, and how many lovers and partners they had experienced in these countless reincarnations. It wasn't that Qin Guang was obsessed with cleanliness to such an abnormal extent that he even despised other people after they had reincarnated. It was because the people in the true martial world were different from the people in the real world. Even if they were resurrected, it was still possible for them to retain part of their previous life's memories. Or even if he gradually forgot everything after a few reincarnations, he couldn't rule out the possibility of suddenly awakening some of his past life's memories when he cultivated to a higher realm. That would be very awkward. Thus, even though these 2 female martial monarchs were extremely beautiful, he remained as still as a mountain. His indifference caused the other 2 martial saints who were seated in the front row to be unable to stand it any longer. Yi Haolong was one of the 4 giants of the 5th holy city of the Shady Ghost sect. His status in the Jianghu was even higher than the official city lord of the 5th holy city to some extent. He arranged 2 beauties for you out of goodwill, and they are even 2 virgin martial monarchs. Others can't even be envious of such benefits, yet you actually turn a blind eye to it? Aren't you making Lord Yi lose face? These 2 martial saints looked at the female companions beside them. The number was less than Qin Guang's, each of them only had 1. Their beauty wasn't as good as Qin Guang's, and they weren't virgins either. Originally, when these 2 people saw that Qin Guang was so valued by Yi Haolong, they were a bit unhappy. Now they had a lot of complaints in their hearts. They couldn't be happy if they didn't say it out. We are all martial saints. Why is your treatment better than ours, yet you don't seem to appreciate it? I say, aren't you a bit too disrespectful? Look at how upset you are making these 2 beauties. Is there anyone who puts on airs like you? The bearded man sitting on the left side of Qin Guang turned around and said with a serious face. The white-faced man sitting on the right side of Qin Guang also turned around when he heard the bearded man speak. That's right. I've heard that you have some ability. However, there are many capable people in the 5th holy city. Knocking down a dragon-riding martial saint is nothing. I'm afraid you should pay more respect to the kindness of your seniors. Qin Guang first looked to the left, then to the right. He didn't want to pay attention to these 2 people at all. He just rolled his eyes, looking like he didn't want to talk nonsense with them. He really wasn't putting on airs on purpose. It was really because the gap between him and these people was too big. In his eyes, he could slap everyone here to death without any psychological pressure. Would an elephant care about what an ant shouted at him? Of course not. Seeing that his attitude didn't change for the better, but became even colder and more arrogant, the bearded man and the white-faced man were instantly angry. Kid, let's go somewhere else. I'll definitely have a taste of your skills and see what you're capable of. The bearded man threw down these harsh words and sat up straight. He clenched his fists so hard that the veins on the back of his hands bulged. The white-faced man's eyes flickered, but he didn't say anything. However, a haze flashed across his face. He obviously had a plan in mind. With Qin Guang's perception, how could he not know that these 2 people wanted to kill him at the same time? But what did it matter? After waiting for another 10 minutes or so, the martial tyrant lecturer from the 6th floor finally arrived. However, no one in the conference hall looked unhappy because of waiting. Instead, their faces were full of anticipation. Only Qin Guang was looking around. He roughly divided the people in the conference hall into 3 types. The first type of people were newcomers like himself. Their faces were 30% curious, 30% hopeful and 40% doubtful. There were also those who had probably already listened to a few so-called lectures. Their eyes were already 30% fanatical and 70% expectant. There were also those who looked like the two martial saints beside him. Their eyes were practically red. It was as if they could jump out and poke a hole in the sky at the command of the other party. Wasn't this clearly the real world's? Ahem, anyway was like that. Next, the white-robed martial tyrant whose face was shrouded in mist and whose face could not be seen clearly, did not disappoint Qin Guang. He gave a rather unique lesson. The general idea was quite similar to what Yi Haolong and Qin Guang had said before. It was generally about some cages, resistance, freedom and true living. Instead of being reincarnated in such a muddle-headed manner, living in the so-called illusion of immortality, we would rather enjoy true death. In the face of the cages imposed on us by others, only great perseverance, great determination and the courage to give up life, even if we turn into malicious spirits, can we truly be free. In general, this provocative joke was indeed of a higher level than Yi Haolong's. Whether it was the rendering of emotions or the substitution of the audience into his rhythm, this lower realm martial tyrant did a better job. In addition, it seemed that he had also practiced a mental cultivation method. It was similar to the Buddhist lion's roar. The principle of the evil sect's sound wave technique was mixed in his voice, which made his speech more infectious. The blood of the other people in the conference hall was boiling as they listened. However, Qin Guang felt that it was nothing. The level of this speech was far worse than the one he had bragged about after he was lured into a pyramid scheme and rescued by his old friend. However, he still heard some very interesting remarks. The history of the entire true martial domain was fabricated before the appearance of the true martial saint. What we know is fake history. Those famous martial emperors with countless titles in the long river of history have never truly existed. The one who imprisoned us in this cage is none other than the so-called true martial saint emperor. The 9 great holy cities are his shackles in the true martial domain. They are his tools to enslave the entire true martial domain. Finally, this martial tyrant raised his arms and shouted in an impassioned tone, "For freedom, for true living, for true death. We, the evil ghost faction, hereby swear to fight against the 9 great holy cities and the true martial saint emperor to the end." Nearly 1,000 people in the conference hall shouted along with him. Even those who came to the lecture for the first time couldn't avoid it. Qin Guang looked left and right. Then he imitated others and raised his arms high. He seemed quite sociable. However, he was commenting on this fellow's speech in his heart. If the full score was 100 points, he would give the other party 82 points. The remaining 18 points would be given to him in the form of 666. If he wasn't the true martial saint who was cursed to death by them, he wouldn't be able to empathize with the speech. Otherwise, he would have been dragged into the ditch by the other party. What they said was reasonable. The true martial saint emperor was simply too hateful. He was simply a scum, a beast. But what could I do? I was dragged into the ditch by Lu Li and the heavenly holy grail from the very beginning. He knew that perhaps the doctrine of the evil ghost faction was correct. He might not be a good person to the people in this world. He felt a trace of sadness in his heart. However, he felt even more helpless. However, he changed his mind. The people in the true martial domain were like this. The people in the transient sea were also the same. But on Earth, were the creatures and humans in the universe the same? Wasn't there the endless divine world above our heads? What about above the endless divine world? While he was lost in thought, the bearded man beside Qin Guang suddenly rushed over. Qin Guang thought that he was going to attack him. So he planned to kill him with one palm. However, he didn't expect that this fellow would directly grab Qin Guang's palm. His eyes were filled with tears. He said with a choked voice, "Brother, our attitude was not good just now. We offended you. Now I understand that everyone's talent in martial arts is different. There must be a reason why Lord Yi values you so much. Now I apologize to you. I hope you can let bygones be bygones. From now on we will be a family. Your business is my business." "That's right. My wife. She's your wife. We are a family. We will live and die together. How can we kill each other before our great cause is accomplished? I am extremely ashamed of the crooked thoughts I had before." The white-faced man beside him also came over. He grabbed Qin Guang's other hand. His face was filled with tears of remorse. Qin Guang opened his mouth slightly. These two fellows are really sick. I was just pretending to raise my hand like the others. Why did they? The white-faced man waved his hand. A slightly weaker female revered martial artist who was sitting behind the three of them shyly walked forward. This female revered martial artist was indeed beautiful. She was even more beautiful than the two women that Yi Haolong had arranged for Qin Guang. The white-faced man grabbed Qin Guang's hand even more attentively. He pointed at the female revered martial artist and said, "Brother, my wife is also your wife." Qin Guang roughly understood why Yi Haolong said that he would be infected by others after staying in the evil ghost faction for a long time. Damn, isn't this too generous? We have only met for the first time today. It is impossible for us to be so familiar with each other in our next lives. Yi Haolong walked over with a smile. He clapped his hands in front of the three of them and said to Qin Guang, "Don't be impatient." Then he looked at Qin Guang. "How was it, Xiaodang? Are you satisfied with today's lesson?" Qin Guang felt embarrassed. Fortunately, his acting skills were good. He nodded heavily. "I deeply agree with you. I am enlightened. I wish I could have come 10 years earlier." Yi Haolong was satisfied. "The fact that you can think like this proves that today's trip was not in vain. Follow me. Lord Sky Martial Tyrant wants to see you alone." Chapter 1269. It turned out that the white-robed man was called the Firmament Martial Lord. His name sounded very domineering, but in the true martial domain this kind of person could only be arrogant in the 6th floor. In the 7th, 8th and 9th floors, it was easy to be killed by others. However, Qin Guang was already used to it. The dragon-riding martial lord who was knocked down by him with 2 fingers, did not say anything. The Firmament Martial Lord was actually quite low-key. Of course, others did not know that it seemed that he had used 2 palms, but in fact he had only used the strength of his fingers at that time, and it was even his little finger. If he had used his middle finger, he was afraid that the entire 5th sacred city would be overturned. "Brother, since Lord Firmament has invited you, you should hurry up." The bearded man next to him continued to flatter him. The white-faced man also continued to hold Qin Guang's hand and said with great emotion, "Yes, the two of us have joined the evil ghost faction for so many years, but we have never had the opportunity to be received by a special envoy from above. Brother, since you are so valued, don't forget me when you become successful in the future. By the way, my younger sister is also a martial venerable with the same appearance as my wife, but she is giving a lecture outside today and has not come back. My wife, little sister, and I will wait for you together." Looking at the white-faced man's extremely eager eyes, Qin Guang finally understood that although this man had cultivated to martial venerable in this life, he was most likely a prostitute in his previous life. His professional instinct was too strong and it was inherited in this life. How could Qin Guang stand his tricks? He decisively followed Yi Haolong and left. In fact, the white-faced man and the bearded man did not know at this time that the white-faced man's continuous unconventional behavior had saved their lives. Originally, Qin Guang planned to send these 2 rude young men to hell when he had time, and then they would be heroes after 18 years, but now he was a little reluctant. This young man was a talent. He followed Yi Haolong through the main door of the conference hall and went straight inside, and saw the so-called Firmament Martial Lord. Qin Guang had thought that the Firmament Martial Tyrant would brag about his noble status and put on airs. Little did he expect that the Firmament Martial Tyrant, who had maintained a solemn expression during the lecture, would actually smile like a Maitreya Buddha. His entire body was brimming with uncontrollable enthusiasm. "Hey Xiaodang, you're here. Please take a seat. I just arrived at the 5th sacred city yesterday. Brother Long has been praising you in front of me. There are countless geniuses in the true martial world, but I haven't seen a genius like you for a long time. Counting the days, little Dang, your talent is worthy of appearing once every 50 years. Now that my Ghost sect has found a talented person, I really want to get close to you." At that moment Qin Guang was stunned. In his memory, the law of the jungle used to be extremely strict in the true martial world. The gap between each level could be said to be very clear. Unless he was a disciple of a great clan, a normal martial tyrant would never address a martial saint as brother. Furthermore, the Firmament Martial Tyrant's enthusiasm when he spoke to him was not an act, but a genuine feeling from the bottom of his heart. The firmament martial tyrant's behavior was completely different from his impression of the martial artists of the true martial world. The firmament martial tyrant saw that Qin Guang was a bit stunned, as if he hadn't come back to his senses and was frightened. However, the firmament martial tyrant didn't feel offended. Instead, he comforted Qin Guang. "What's wrong? You're not used to my enthusiasm? It's okay. You'll get used to it slowly. People only know that the name of our Yin Ghost sect is not righteous. They think that we're evil sections. They don't know that the so-called Yin Ghost doesn't have any evil intentions. We have a clear conscience in our actions. We only seek to free the common people of the true martial world. The so-called high or low status is nothing more than a difference of sooner or later. Today you're a martial saint and I look at you as an equal. In the future, when you become a titled martial emperor, you'll also look at other martial saints and even martial monarchs with the same eyes as me." Yi Haolong, who was next to him, also smiled. "That's right. Not to mention Lord Firmament, even the two saints of our Yin Ghost sect, who are far more powerful than the 3 emperors of the 9th sacred city, will be friendly and harmonious with you if you have the opportunity to meet them. We're all in the same boat. In fact, we should work together as a family." Looking at these two people, Qin Guang's mood fluctuated slightly. He even wavered in his heart. Am I really going to destroy the Yin Ghost sect? However, he immediately shook his head fiercely. Could it be that I've also been brainwashed? Yi Haolong saw that Qin Guang was lost in thought. He continued, "Xiao Dang, actually I called you here this time because I sincerely hope that you can join us sincerely. You've also seen what kind of existence we are. It can even be said that whether it's fictional history or the real history after the true martial saint emperor left for the first time, our Yin Ghost sect is definitely an unprecedented existence." The firmament martial tyrant raised his head again and said, "Our real purpose is not to rebel against anyone. You should feel that we want to change the entire true martial domain. We want everyone to no longer be shackled by these 9 so-called levels. Even the weaklings living in the first level should have a real life and not become enslaved tools." Qin Guang let out a long sigh. "Previously I did have a lot of prejudice against the Yin Ghost sect. After seeing it today I really have a lot of feelings." Hey, why do you need to feel anything? Remember this sentence. You just need to have a clear conscience. By the way, these are some of my experiences that I recorded when I was still a martial venerable. Don't refuse it. Take it and study it in detail. It may be helpful to you. As the firmament martial tyrant spoke, he took out a small book from his robe and stuffed it into Qin Guang's hand without any explanation. Qin Guang looked down. The book looked wrinkled, but it was made of special paper that was quite strong. The seemingly old book didn't have the slightest smell. It even had a faint fragrance. The firmament martial tyrant must have carried it with him when he was cultivating and studied it every day. After being infused with yin and yang qi, this seemingly ordinary book contained the essence of Tao principles. That was why it had such a strange fragrance. It smelled like black iron that came out of one's fart. The firmament martial tyrant was indeed sincere. It was unknown whether it was his nature or he had been brainwashed by the teachings of the Yin Ghost sect. Qin Guang raised his head and looked at him. The firmament martial tyrant just smiled, as if he was sparing no effort to cultivate the younger generation. Qin Guang gritted his teeth. He had to admit that he had to make a decision as soon as possible. Otherwise, he might really become one of the Yin Ghost sect's people if he continued like this. He was just about to refuse the firmament martial tyrant's kindness. Unexpectedly, the white-robed firmament martial tyrant said, "You should keep this book first. An old friend of mine has asked me for it many times, but I refuse to lend it to him. If he sees this book in your hands, I'm afraid he will follow you all day and harass you. The matter in the 5th sacred city has been settled. I'm going to White City first and then return to the 6th floor. I wonder if you're interested in going with me?" Qin Guang asked in confusion. "White City?" "That's right. That's the real core of the Yin Ghost sect on this floor. People who are not from the Orthodox sect are not allowed to enter. If you go with me, it means that you've officially joined the Yin Ghost sect. Every new martial venerable is qualified to enter White City and get a residence there. The yin and yang qi in that place is extraordinarily rich and it's even better than the sacred city. The most important thing is that you're very lucky this time. You'll have a chance to meet a real big shot. How about it? Do you want to go?" After saying that, the firmament martial tyrant looked at Qin Guang expectantly. Qin Guang subconsciously wanted to avoid his eyes. He felt ashamed. But in the end his acting skills burst out. There was a brief hesitation in his eyes, and then it quickly changed into determination. In the end he nodded heavily, but there was more expectation in his eyes. I'll go. Chapter 1270. After all, he still had to go to the base of the evil ghost sect. After all, Xin Qin and Wu Miaoan were likely to be imprisoned there. As for the big shot that the firmament martial tyrant had mentioned, he was also very interested in the person who was very amiable. The more he interacted with these people, the more he found that the evil ghost sect, which seemed to be unforgivable in the words of the 3 emperors of the holy city, was actually not annoying. It was especially so for that bro who kept saying, "My wife is also your wife." When Qin Guang recalled the expression on that fellow's face when he talked about such nonsense, he couldn't help but burst into laughter. The firmament martial lord, who was sitting next to him with his eyes closed, was awakened by his laughter. He opened his eyes and asked, "What's wrong? Xiaodang, did you remember something happy?" Qin Guang smiled. "I remembered that I used to listen to other people's rumors and had a lot of prejudices against the evil ghost sect. I suddenly find it ridiculous." Qin Guang thought that the firmament martial lord would take the opportunity to continue to criticize the evil ghost sect, but he shook his head and said, "No, there's no need to laugh at our past selves. The sages once taught us that everyone's life is divided into several stages. Each stage is a precious experience. It's our past selves that made us who we are today. Whether it's the things we've experienced in this life or the countless lives we've experienced in the past, it's nothing special." Looking at the slightly wrinkled face of the firmament martial lord, Qin Guang felt that he was not looking at a person but a walking philosopher. After all, he was just a martial lord living on the 6th floor. God knew how many people like him there were in the evil ghost sect. It was really a terrifying organization. In addition, he had heard them mention the sages more than once. These 2 sages should be the 2 super martial emperors that the 3 emperors of the holy city had mentioned in the past few decades, right? It seemed that although these 2 people were not the founders of the evil ghost sect, they were the greatest masters of this sect. That's right. Now Qin Guang no longer regarded the evil ghost sect as a sect but a sect. The diesel motorcycle sped along the mountain trail, leaving the 5th sacred city and heading deep into the mountains. In fact, with the strength of the passengers on the train, they might be faster than the diesel locomotive by relying on their feet. However, not everyone was like Qin Guang, who had inexhaustible strength. Even the firmament martial lord could not run from the 5th holy city to the Great Snow Mountain by relying on his feet. One day later, the group changed their mode of transportation again. When he saw the small airport hidden in the deep mountains, Qin Guang was once again shocked by the power of the evil ghost faction. If he remembered correctly, planes were controlled items in the 9 great holy cities, and every plane had a record. However, this was only the 5th floor and the evil ghost faction could get this thing. Seeing the astonished look on Qin Guang's face, the firmament martial tyrant took the initiative to introduce. "You didn't expect this, did you? These are all parts that the sacred city's technicians quietly took out from the major cities under the guise of replacing the parts. Then we reorganized them and pieced them together into a complete plane." Amazing. Qin Guang let out a long sigh. Although the experience of this plane was far inferior to the one he had driven from the 9th holy city, the materials used, the quality of the parts, and the endurance were far better than the plane of the 5th holy city. They say they are old parts, but in fact they are 99% new, and many of them are new parts that have not been widely used. Some of them were even taken from the higher cities, and some were made by the top engineers who joined the evil ghost faction. They are even better than the ones in the 9 holy cities. The firmament martial lord began to brag again. Qin Guang had to cooperate with him and put on a very surprised and enthusiastic look. Not only was the firmament martial lord good at playing the emotional card, but he could also always seize the opportunity to show the strength of the evil ghost faction in front of Qin Guang. The evil ghost faction was very good at talking. They played the emotional card, but they also had a lot of benefits. After flying for another half a day under the full control of a martial venerable pilot, the smuggling plane flew thousands of kilometers, crossed mountains and rivers, and finally stopped at the center of the Great Plain on the 5th level at the foot of the Great Snow Mountain. This was an airport runway built in a col, and it was not more than 100 meters long. It was far inferior to the airport runway in the real world, but it was just right for landing this strange small plane that was half manual and half mechanical. After all, a normal plane would not have several martial venerables running to the bottom of the plane, putting their feet on the ground and forcibly stepping on the brakes. Previously, Qin Guang did not understand why there were several martial venerables in staff uniforms on this small plane. It was not until the plane landed that the four people jumped out of the cabin at the same time and stepped on the ground with their feet wearing special wear-resistant shoes. Then the whole plane rumbled with sparks and lightning, leaving 2 long tracks on the ground, and finally came to a stop with great difficulty. He finally understood. The Firmament Martial Lord explained, "This is the only place in the Great Snow Mountain that is suitable for building a runway. It's a little too short." Qin Guang asked, "Why don't you build it at the foot of the Great Snow Mountain? It's not far from here." The Firmament Martial Lord heaved a long sigh, and there was indescribable loneliness in his voice. "Although the strength of our sect is not what it used to be, this is the world of the true martial saint emperor, and it's not easy to be discovered in this snow mountain. We are still no match for the 9 sacred cities. Only by lying low and advancing step by step can we achieve great things." Qin Guang nodded without saying anything. He did not feel conflicted at the moment, but the sinister ghost sect reminded him of a certain organization in Xia in the real world. They carried out their work with great ideals, and they slowly started as underground workers. After they got off the plane, they climbed up along the rugged ice and snow road. 2 hours later, they got on a cable car that was painted white. Finally, they arrived at White City halfway up the mountain before it was getting dark. After entering White Town, Qin Guang tried to secretly mobilize his power and integrate his spiritual power with the surrounding environment. It only took him 5 minutes to find Xianxia and Wu Miaoan, who were imprisoned in the ice prison. Following behind the Firmament Martial Tyrant, Qin Guang quietly raised his head to look at the mountain wall on the right side of Town. It was a mountain wall that had been dug into the air. There were more than 10 small holes on the mountain wall, which were the windows of the ice prison. When Qin Guang fully activated his power, not only could he see the situation of the two with his mind's eye, but he could also hear their conversation. "It's been a whole day. Why haven't Master and the others come yet? What's going on? Even if they don't remember us, they shouldn't have stopped interrogating us, right?" This was Wu Miaoan's voice. "There's no hurry. The news of our disappearance must have reached Qin Guang's ears. He will definitely come to find us. When he sees Master, he will definitely be shocked. No matter how big the misunderstanding is, it can always be explained." This was Xianxia speaking. "I still think it's possible that it's just 2 people who look alike." "That's impossible. It's understandable that they look similar, but don't you think their temperament is exactly the same as our Master's?" Suddenly, Qin Guang's footsteps came to a halt. "Master." Chapter 1271. He didn't understand why he heard Xianxia and Wu Miaoan call him Master. The conversation between the two was still going on. "Do you think our masters will fight with Qin Guang? What should we do?" Wu Miaoan seemed to be talking to herself, but also seemed to be asking Xianxia. Xianxia shook her head. "Little Miaoan, you don't have to worry. I've read a lot of ancient books before. I asked you to read them, but you didn't read them. You still don't know what a martial sage is. Even if our master is the strongest person in the evil ghost faction, he shouldn't be a match for him at all. That Qin Guang wouldn't kill our master with a single palm, right?" Wu Miaoan, who was under house arrest, didn't worry about her own safety. Instead, she was worried about the culprit who kidnapped her. Xianxia speculated, "It shouldn't be. He can recognize people at a glance. He definitely won't kill them." At this time, the 2 little girls didn't know that there were at least 3 people listening to their conversation. Qin Guang didn't say anything. He was immersed in the title of master with a blank face. As for the other 2, of course, they were Abbess Xianyuan and Wu Qingming, who were not far from the ice prison. "These 2 people are actually worried about us. Is it true?" Wu Qingming sighed in bewilderment. Abbess Xianyuan also gradually wavered, "But they come from a different world, and we are from the true martial domain. This doesn't make sense. Anyway, listening to these 2 people, it seems that true martial holy emperor really values them. Why don't we simply use these 2 people as hostages to propose conditions to the 9th holy city? Either they recognize the existence of the evil ghost faction, Give us a fair identity and let us expand freely, or these two people can't go back. Wu Qingming hesitated and said, I'm afraid it will be very difficult. True martial Holy Emperor has always been known for his decisiveness and indifference. Just these two people, will he let the evil ghost faction go? After all, the evil ghost faction wants to rebel against him and his 9 holy cities. The two of them hesitated. They were worried that even if they took the lives of the 2 women, the true martial Holy Emperor would still turn a blind eye to it. He would only come to take revenge. That would not achieve his goal. Instead, he would poke a hornet's nest. The 2 masters had no idea that after Qin Guang discovered that Xin Qin and Wu Miaowan were safe and sound, he shifted his attention to the area near the ice prison. As expected, he saw them. Xin Qin and Wu Miaowan's worries were unnecessary because Qin Guang already knew the identities of the 2 of them. Due to the great distance between them, he wasn't able to accurately determine the cultivation realms of these 2 people. However, with his perception, he was able to tell that these 2 people shouldn't be here at all given their cultivation realms. Urban management. That's right. The management of White City is called urban management. This is the system and title set by the saints. Is there a problem? No, there's no problem. Qin Guang silently gave him a thumbs up. Great job. The firmament martial tyrant said again. If I delay any longer, I'm afraid that even my cultivation will be affected. When you come to the 6th floor, you can contact me through the sex message. I don't know when I'll be able to come to the 5th floor again. However, based on my judgment, whether or not you've broken through to the martial venerable realm, you should come to the 6th floor as soon as possible. Since you're a dragon in the sky, why should you indulge in the mundane world? With your talent, you should have soared to the sky earlier. After saying this, the firmament martial tyrant waved his hand and left. Qin Guang could see everything in the entire White City with his mind's eye, so he was not in a hurry. The person he was looking for was here. If he stayed here, he could look after Xin Qin and Wu Miaowan, as well as keep an eye on the so-called saints who were suspected to be dead. It didn't matter if the Protoss players and the human race players caused a ruckus outside. No one could leave without the ancient well anyway. As for his friends that might be reset in the mission, Qin Guang could only be worried about it. He had no better way to deal with it. He had already asked the 3 emperors of the Holy City to hand over the portraits of everyone. However, the appearances of the people who entered the True Force domain were quite different. Not everyone had the ability to see through the players' appearances and see their souls directly like he did. Therefore, the portraits he had taken out back then could only serve as a psychological comfort. Unless they exposed themselves like Xin Qin and Wu Miaowan, the possibility of finding them was extremely low. Therefore, even though he was worried, he could only let it be. After all, he was only one person. No matter how powerful he was, he didn't have thousands of clones. Becoming stronger day by day in the game and continuously climbing up the ranks required both ability and luck. However, if one was unfortunate enough to fall, it was still fate. Even if Qin Guang had the heart to be someone's nanny, there was always a limit to his power. He could take care of things for a while, but he couldn't take care of them forever. Fortunately, this special world of jumping off the building had inexplicably pulled players from a small world into the same location. Fortunately, Shifeng was able to keep an eye on them. In the normal world of jumping off the building, he was separated from everyone else in a small world. No matter how powerful he was only one player at the moment. At most, he was just a relatively powerful player. He didn't have the ability to break through the barrier between different mission spaces. Therefore, brothers and sisters, good luck. Fortunately, with the potential that everyone had shown so far and the super buff that came with the team effect, those who were friends with Qin Guang had far more potential than ordinary players. Of course, their survival rate was higher. When night fell, Abbess Xin Yuan and Wu Qingming finally made up their minds after much hesitation. The 2 of them once again appeared in the ice prison where Xin Qin and Wu Miaowan were imprisoned. At this time, Xin Qin and Wu Miaowan were not as shocked as they were when they first saw them. Instead, they were much calmer. 2 little girls, don't think that we'll let you go just because you're pretending to be close to us. Wu Qingming was indeed a veteran. No matter what she thought, her face was still covered with a layer of frost. Abbess Xin Yuan held her horsetail whisk with both hands and stood at the side without saying a word. No one could tell what she was thinking. Wu Miaowan was also a smart person. She pointed at her face and said to Wu Qingming, "Master, do you really not recognize me?" As soon as the words left her mouth, Wu Miaoan reacted first. That's right. Her appearance was different from the real world. It would be strange if she could recognize her. "Don't talk nonsense. This is a document. Write your names on it and put a fingerprint on it. We will send someone to hand it over to Zhen Wu, Holy Emperor. If you want to live, listen to us obediently," Zhen Wu, Holy Emperor said. Wu Qingming continued to put on a cold face and put a brocade on the table. Xen Qin looked at Abbess Xen Yuan and let out a long sigh. Suddenly she said, "Master, since you left, I've kept your teachings in mind. I've been appointed as the Deputy Minister of Heaven and brought the Thousand Despair sect to greater heights. In the past, Qin Guang had once hosted a national darts tournament and picked out many seedlings. Now, our Thousand Despair sect and Little Miaoan's Thousand Flowers Valley are among the 8 major sections. Our reputation is not inferior to the 3 major families." As soon as Xen Qin said this, Abbess Xen Yuan and Wu Qingming were slightly stunned. After a while they came back to their senses and looked thoughtful. Wu Miaoan added, "That's right. We've finally completed the teachings left by our ancestors and carried forward the sect." The 2 masters always felt. It was as if the memories from a very, very long time ago were slowly showing signs of loosening. This memory was illusory, as if it was not in the true martial domain. However, it was unforgettable, as if it was an obsession in one of their lives. Chapter 1272. Especially the names Thousand Despair Sect and 10,000 Flowers Valley. In the hearts of Abbess Xen Huan and Wu Qingming, it was like a great bell was ringing fiercely. It sounded so familiar, but when they dug carefully in their minds, they felt distant and unfamiliar. They wanted to forget or ignore these 2 names, but they found that the moment they heard them, they were engraved in the depths of their hearts. Even if they took a wedge to pull it out, they would not be able to pull it out. Abbess Xen Huan and Wu Qingming had reincarnated in the true martial realm for many lifetimes. Although they had wasted countless years in the past, there would always be some unforgettable past. Now the 2 had finally cultivated to the level of the entire true martial realm in this life. Many memories of their previous lives had been awakened. In this life, they had seen more of the fickleness of the world and the fickleness of human nature. Because the 2 were the strongest martial emperors, they had awakened more memories. The more memories they had, the more life they had experienced. This had also created a particularly unique worldview and way of doing things for the 2. In addition, both Wu Qingming and Abbess Xen Huan had a feeling that the formation of their own personality did not seem so simple. There was a deeper reason, but the 2 could not find the answer. It was just that from time to time, like Wu Qingming, they would come up with a MLM teaching material or a job title called city management. The 2 did not find anything strange about it. They thought it was just a sudden burst of inspiration. But this time, the 2 seemingly ordinary sect names had inexplicably caused such a big impact on them. The 2 were obviously at the top of the evil ghost sect. Even in the true martial realm, it was difficult for them to surpass their status. Their minds had long been polished to be as firm as stone. Under normal circumstances, even if some memories of their previous lives were recalled, they should not be so shaken. This was difficult to understand. Wu Miaoan and Xen Qin saw that their self-introductions seemed to have shocked the 2 masters who looked exactly like them. They looked at each other and could not hide their joy. As long as the other party had a reaction, it proved that their guess was right. These 2 people were indeed their masters. Although they did not know why they appeared here with such identities, nor did they know why they lost their memories, it did not matter. In any case, the entire game system couldn't be judged using the old logic. What was so strange about the dead being resurrected here? The cause and effect of the matter was no longer important. What was important was the result that was happening in front of him. Wu Miaoan rolled her eyes and came up with an idea. She took the brocade and bone brush that Wu Qingming had placed on the table. Xen Qin raised her hand to stop her, thinking that she wanted an autograph. Wu Miaoan blinked and flipped the silk over again. Then she started drawing on it at an extremely fast speed. At first glance, Xen Qin understood what she meant, and her eyes lit up. That's right, this is indeed a solution. Although there were no cameras in this world, there were no photos, and there was no way to use Photoshop to show a person's appearance. However, Wu Miaoan still had a unique skill apart from her medical skills. It was this sketch drawing that allowed her to draw a person's face vividly on the paper with just a few strokes. In the real world, as the Deputy Minister of Heaven, Wu Miaowan did not have many opportunities to show off her drawing skills. However, she did not forget her skills. While the two masters were in a daze, Wu Miaowan used less than 2 minutes to draw Xianxia's face on the back of the silk. On the other side, the two masters finally forced themselves to calm down. Wu Qingming glared angrily. "You're already at death's door, yet you're still talking nonsense. Stop talking nonsense and sign." Although Wu Qingming's words sounded fierce, her tone and expression betrayed her completely shaken state of mind. "Wait a minute." Unexpectedly, Abbess Xianxia was the first to speak. She was staring blankly at the silk that Wu Miaowan had placed on the table. Her gaze was distant, and an even more intense memory was awakening in the depths of her mind. Although it was only a portrait drawn with simple lines, it vividly displayed Xianxia's true appearance. Wu Qingming asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" Abbess Xianxia said with a trembling voice, "This little girl, I feel that she looks very familiar." Wu Miaowan's skill was still at the level of a master. Although it was a short time and she only had time to draw some lines, the most obvious features of Xianxia's face were vividly outlined. It was much more realistic than the one that Qin Guang had described in the 9th Holy City and found someone to draw it with difficulty. It was to the extent that seeing the painting was like seeing the person in person. "Familiar? Let me see." Wu Qingming grabbed the silk with Xianxia on it from the table and squinted at it for a moment. "That's impossible. I should know everyone that you know." Wu Qingming lowered her head and looked at Wu Miaowan. She was drawing quickly on the second silk. "Alright, it's harder to draw myself than to draw others. It's all my fault for not being narcissistic enough in the past. I didn't look at myself in the mirror enough." After saying that, Wu Miaowan picked up the freshly drawn painting. She pulled her hands apart and raised it horizontally, facing Wu Qingming. Wu Qingming's pupils shrank instantly. This is... Who is this? Why does it give me such a familiar feeling?" Wu Miaowan's eyes suddenly turned red. "Master, this is the real appearance of your disciple. This is me." "Impossible. This is absolutely impossible." Wu Qingming retreated step by step as if she had seen a great horror. Abbess Xianxia sighed slightly. She pulled Wu Qingming to the door of the ice prison. She never expected that the two interrogations, which were not proportional to the strength of the two sides, would end in vain. When the two left, they took away the two paintings that Wu Miaowan had drawn. It was not as if they had gained nothing. At the same time, Qin Guang, who was resting in his room, silently dispersed the martial power that he had circulated to the extreme. If Wu Qingming and Abbess Xianxia intended to kill Xianxia and Qin Guang would be able to rush out of the room and appear in the ice prison in less than a second. In the entire True Force domain, there was no wall that could stop him, not even the ice prison of White City. After changing into the white robe that Firmament Martial Tyrant had prepared for him, Qin Guang opened the door of the room. He planned to walk around White City to increase his knowledge. At the same time, he could pretend to spy for the 9 great holy cities. Qin Guang could not understand why the 9 great holy cities had not been able to infiltrate their spies in the long history. Wasn't his work efficiency and ability a little too low? Could it be that the 9 great holy cities were so honest that they did not have any intention of doing underground work? This was obviously impossible. However, about 2 hours later he had a rough idea. Although it was nighttime, the market of White City was still bustling with people. The bustling crowd even reminded him of the snack street behind Gokyo University in the real world. What was even more inconceivable was the people in the market. The currency used here was still the holy coin, which was commonly used in the mainland. However, along the way, everyone had a smile on their face, brimming with a friendly and peaceful atmosphere. Whether it was a martial venerable or a martial monarch, even the weakest chivalrous warrior would be treated with friendliness. Chivalrous warriors could even find a martial venerable on the street at any time to ask about their martial arts insights. Unless the martial venerable was too busy, they would never be impatient. In addition, the white robe that Qin Guang was wearing also had a special symbol, indicating his martial venerable strength. Often when he passed by some shops, the shop owners would rush out of the shop enthusiastically, either to serve him a few barbecues or to treat him to a glass of good wine. Qin Guang did not spend a single coin, but he was stuffed with the dazzling array of delicious food in the market. When he returned to his room, he finally understood. It was not that the 9 great holy cities did not use spies, but in the true martial world where everyone could be resurrected and everyone knew that they could be reincarnated, there were often no family members or normal friendships. Because of this, everyone in the true martial world could freely choose what kind of life they wanted, because there was really nothing that could force them to do something they did not want to do. Staying in the evil ghost faction, one could feel happy and also study martial arts. Even if one was a spy, entering this white city would be like throwing a meat bun at a dog. Forget it, the 9 great holy cities did not lose unjustly. Qin Guang was about to sleep, but someone knocked on the door. It was a stranger standing at the door. He bowed to Qin Guang and said, "Marshal Venerable, the 2 saints have just finished their official business. They want to meet the new Marshal Venerable today. Are you interested in going?" Qin Guang was puzzled and said, "It's already so late and the saints still want to meet me?" The messenger nodded. "The 2 saints are from above. Time is tight and they always fight for every minute. The saints' few words of advice are also beneficial to cultivation. This opportunity is really rare. Marshal Venerable, please make a decision quickly." Chapter 1273. Go, why not? This is a rare opportunity. I have to go even if it's late. I'm just afraid of disturbing the sage. With a chuckle, Qin Guang left with the messenger. He was not worried that he would encounter any danger in White City. To be precise, no one or anything in the entire true martial domain could threaten him, including Yu Ting and the other gods. If the gods dared to provoke him here, they would end up like the 4 god emperors he encountered when he first arrived in the true martial domain. The only difference was his mood at the time, which could determine whether the other party's death was ugly or not. Qin Guang thought he would have to wait for a long time. He did not expect to see Abbess Xen Yuan and Wu Qingming 5 minutes later. "Come sit here. Don't be nervous." Qin Guang entered the door and looked up to see the 2 sitting on the left and right of this seemingly ordinary room. Wu Qingming greeted him with a smile. The 2 were dressed very simply. Abbess Xen Yuan wore a grayish-white monk robe. Although Wu Qingming did not change her habit of wearing flowery clothes, the material was also simple. But what really shocked Qin Guang the most was the appearance of the 2. Even if he used the mind's eye to see them clearly, the feeling and impact was still not as good as seeing them face to face. The shock in Qin Guang's heart was no less than Xen Qin and Wu Miaowan's. In fact, it was even more intense. With his cultivation in the true martial domain and his degree of integration with the entire true martial domain, it was not difficult for him to see the essence through the appearance. Although the 2 souls were perfectly integrated with the true martial domain, in Qin Guang's eyes, the 2 souls were simply incompatible with the entire true martial domain. It seemed that the 2 seniors encountered the same situation as Ling Qin. After Ling Qin died, she was reborn in the Transient Sea and founded the Radiance Pirate Group. He did not know what was going on now. The 2 seniors died tragically in reality, but they were lucky to be reborn in the true martial domain. The souls of these 2 seniors were more complete than those of the aborigines of the true martial world. Therefore, they had accumulated a lot of experience after several millions of years of reincarnation. And they had cultivated their martial power to a level that was far beyond that of other martial emperors. However, they were not like Qin Guang. They could not enjoy Qin Guang's treatment of having the entire world serve them. Hence, they could never surpass martial emperors and become true martial saints. At the same time, because they were the souls of outsiders, they were naturally compatible with the Yin Ghost sect. It was their destiny to become the saints of the evil ghost sect. This drink and peck seemed to be preordained by the heavens. As someone who had seen the Bell of Destiny, Qin Guang suddenly felt that he had gained a deeper understanding of destiny. Getting to know these 2 seniors was fate formed by the combination of countless coincidences. The 2 seniors dying in the battle with Ouyang Tianqing was also fated. They were originally martial artists. After their death, their souls were absorbed by the heavenly Holy Grail. They entered the true martial domain and became the pillars of the Yin Ghost sect. "You are called Dangu, right? We have heard about you from Firmament. We are glad that you are willing to join the Yin Ghost sect." Seeing that Qin Guang was so shocked that he could not even speak, Master Xen Yuan, who was usually serious, also smiled and took the initiative to speak. Qin Guang suddenly raised his head and looked at the two masters. His eyes showed a struggle. He rarely hesitated and could not make up his mind. However, this time he really could not do it. The Yin Ghost sect was too different from what he had imagined. For the cruel people of the true martial domain, this was the ideal place that everyone yearned for. He seemed to have become the villain, the evil boss who wanted to destroy the beliefs of others. If he was not the true martial holy emperor, if he had not created the 9 great holy cities by himself, if he had encountered the Yin Ghost sect when he first came to the true martial domain, he would have taken the initiative to join. It could even be said that if the 9 great holy cities were already ruling forces in the true martial domain when he first came, he was more likely to become the founder of an organization like the Yin Ghost sect. Now, once he opened his mouth, he would immediately stand on the opposite side of the two seniors. The true martial holy emperor appeared in front of the 2 great saints of the Yin Ghost sect in this white city. This was equivalent to a direct declaration of war. However, this matter could not be avoided. Xianxia and Wu Miaoan were 2 different things. Qin Guang could rescue them without anyone knowing. However, he had to ask about the whereabouts of the ancient well. Just as Xianxia and Wu Miaoan thought, it was impossible for Qin Guang to kill the 2 of them. Back then, when the 2 of them died, he was largely responsible for them to a certain extent, so he was in a difficult position. Forget it, I will lay my cards on the table first. If I can let them know who I am and let them recover the memories of their previous lives, that scene is really beautiful. Although Qin Guang did not know what to do, it was always good to try. Both of you, I am very happy to meet you. You can develop the Yin Ghost sect to the current situation under the suppression of the 9 great holy cities. I have to say that I admire you. The moment Qin Guang opened his mouth, the 2 saints could immediately tell that something was different. The revered martial artist this time was different from the past. From his tone, they could hear the respect he had for the 2 of them. However, his respect was completely different from the respect of ordinary revered martial artists. There was a slightly condescending feeling, but at the same time he seemed to be very kind to them. This kind of intimacy was very strange. It was different from the feelings of the ordinary members of the Yin Ghost sect towards the saints. It was like he was very familiar with the 2 of them since a long time ago. Moreover, his attitude was neither servile nor overbearing. It was completely different from the worship of the Yin Ghost sect towards the strong. Qin Guang's performance made Abbess Xianyuan and Wu Qingming a little confused. Wu Qingming grinned a little embarrassedly. It's just a little achievement. It's not worth mentioning. It's all planted by the predecessors. If it weren't for the accumulation of the Yin Ghost sect for 100,000 years, it would not be the turn of the 2 of us to carry it forward. Abbess Xianyuan also said, yes, in the final analysis, it's the Yin Ghost sect's own philosophy that wins the hearts of the people. The elites in the true martial domain have bright eyes and recognize the purpose of the Yin Ghost sect. Qin Guang nodded. With my experience in the past 2 days, it's indeed an eye-opener. It's not something that ordinary people can do. I have also read a lot of information related to your sect before. I found that although your sect had already been rising for 100,000 years, its development was relatively slow. Until the 2 of you appeared and integrated the originally scattered Yin Ghost sect into one in just a few decades. Only then did the Yin Ghost sect grow rapidly. Looking at the history of the Yin Ghost sect for 100,000 years, I'm afraid only the founder of the sect can be compared with you 2. The more Wu Qingming and Abbess Xianyuan listened, the more they felt that something was wrong. Qin Guang's words seemed to be praising the 2 of them, but his words always showed a sense of equality. He didn't respect the 2 of them at all, like how a martial venerable looked at a legendary martial emperor. In addition, he also addressed the Yin Ghost sect as the so-called noble sect. This meant that although he had come to White Town, he did not regard himself as a member of the Yin Ghost sect at all. This was a very rare phenomenon. Not only that, even if he really thought so, shouldn't he cover up a little in front of the 2 of them? This time Wu Qingming and Abbess Xianyuan finally couldn't hold back. The atmosphere in the room suddenly changed and the air in the room suddenly became cold. Who the hell are you? Abbess Xianyuan's face turned cold and said calmly. Wu Qingming next to her waved her hand. Sister Xen, don't be so excited. Dang Wu, I understand what you mean. After all, this is your first time here and you don't have enough recognition of us. We also understand that, but you can stay here for a few more days. When you have more dealings with other people, you will understand what kind of existence we are. By the way, Sister Xin and I will leave here tomorrow at the latest. If you have any problems in cultivation, you can come to us and ask a question. Wu Qingming's words meant that she was going to ask him to leave. Qin Guang shook his head slightly. Two seniors, I really don't think you can give me any advice on martial arts. His words had a deep meaning to them. The reason he addressed them as seniors was because they were indeed seniors worthy of his respect. But with his current cultivation of martial sage in the true martial realm, if he couldn't understand it, then no one in the world could. Bang! Abbess Xin Yuan finally got angry and slapped the table. Brat, did you hear others say that we are easy to talk to, so you have some misunderstanding? Since we met today you have been acting weird. Do you really think that we have no temper at all? This time Wu Qingming was not interested in extinguishing the fire. She also looked at Qin Guang with a cold face. It seemed that she would take him down if there was a disagreement. Don't, two seniors, I don't mean any harm. Qin Guang quickly said, what I said is from the bottom of my heart. I really don't mean to look down on you two. As for my identity, I don't want to hide it anymore. But I have to say something first. After you know who I am, don't be too excited and calm down. I really don't mean any harm. Moreover, the fate between you two and me may be about millions of years ago. Wu Qingming frowned. Say it. I am Qin Guang. Qin Guang said while carefully paying attention to the reaction of the two. Qin Guang? Wu Qingming and Xin Yuan didn't react for a while. Qin Guang smiled. I almost forgot, in the true martial domain very few people know my real name. People usually call me True Martial Holy Emperor. Wu Qingming and Xin Yuan didn't come back to their senses immediately, almost thinking that they had heard wrong. After a moment of silence, an amazing aura rose from the two. What? Say it again? Xin Yuan shook her horsetail whisk fiercely and glared at him. Wu Qingming's robe also fluttered, overflowing with energy. Qin Guang had no choice but to repeat it again. I have told you two to calm down, but you just don't listen? I am indeed True Martial Holy Emperor Qin Guang. Don't do it, you are not my opponent. This joke is not funny at all. Wu Qingming looked at him coldly. Abbess Xin Huan suddenly made her move. She twisted her body abruptly and raised her hand to grab Qin Guang's head. Acting all mysterious. I don't care who you are. I'll take you down first. Looking at her move, it was quite similar to the moves of the Thousand Despair sect. But this simple claw was like an antelope hanging its horn, wonderful beyond words. Her speed was extremely fast, and the cold light on her fingertips seemed to be able to pierce through space. In an instant, it changed into 9 phantoms, making people feel that it was unstoppable. Qin Guang raised his head and looked at her. Although senior nun Xin Yuan's expression was cold, she still held back a third of her strength. She could stop at any time. She didn't intend to kill him. But how could Qin Guang be caught by her? He sighed. I have no other way now. You two seniors don't believe me, so I can only subdue you first and then talk to you. Chapter 1274. Next to him, Wu Qingming looked cold and said angrily, boastful. But before she finished speaking, her mouth opened slightly and could not be closed for a long time. The reason was very simple. The claw of Abbess Xin Huan was easily caught by the young man who claimed to be True Martial Holy Emperor. When he made his move, he did not have the thunderous momentum of Abbess Xin Huan. It was as easy as picking up a cup of water with his hand. But his movement was so fast. What was more terrifying was that in this seemingly simple movement he could completely dissolve Abbess Xin Huan's claw with 70% power. After blocking Abbess Xin Huan's claw, Qin Guang did not take advantage of the victory. Instead he looked at the two helplessly. I have said it before. Why don't you believe me? I am Qin Guang. Qin Guang is True Martial Holy Emperor. This time, Abbess Xin Huan and Wu Qingming believed him. However, the two did not plan to sit down and talk with Qin Guang as he expected. Instead, the atmosphere on the scene became more tense. Forget it. Anyway, there will be a battle between us sooner or later. Since you have already come to us, we have no way to avoid it. True Martial Holy Emperor, die. Once the relationship between the enemy and them was confirmed, Wu Qingming was more decisive than Abbess Xin Huan. She roared and rushed to Qin Guang with all her strength. Abbess Xin Huan's eyes showed a look of struggle. She also clenched her teeth and continued to rush forward silently. Qin Guang thought to himself, how can this be? Don't look at how high the fighting spirit of these two people is at this time. If I go all out, I can bet 50 cents with others. Don't think that these two seniors are the strongest martial emperors in the entire true martial domain. They are said to be the closest to martial sage. However, these two seniors can't even last 2 rounds under my hands. Without reaching my realm, it would never be possible to understand the gap between martial sage and martial emperor. One was a bird in a cage while the other was a star in the sky. The gap between the two could not be mentioned in the same breath, and it was not something that could be made up for with just a few slogans and a little courage. However, he could not fight with the two seniors here. He could control his strength to the pinnacle, but even if he only defended himself, the force released by the two seniors could still destroy the entire White City if it spread in all directions. In addition, he also discovered that when the two of them were circulating their power, the internal energy within their bodies was not as smooth. The two of them had forcefully descended to the 5th layer with the cultivation of martial monarchs. This was a violation of the rules of the true force realm. With Qin Guang's eyesight, he could tell at a glance that the two of them wouldn't be able to go all out for long. Were they risking their lives? I can't use my hands and feet here. I'll wait for you at the top of this snowy mountain. Don't even think about escaping. I already know where White City is. Qin Guang immediately made up his mind. He flew through the door and flew up into the sky. He stepped on the void and disappeared in a few seconds. Abbess Xianxia and Wu Qingming looked at each other. Chase. The two of them said in unison. They didn't know why this young man who claimed to be true martial holy emperor had no intention to fight. What was he plotting? Or was he the same as the two of them? He also used an unorthodox method to forcefully descend to the 5th layer, and the restrictions he suffered were more severe than them. The strength he used to catch Abbess Xianxuan's claw was all the strength he could exert in a short time? Was he exhausted now? This was a rare opportunity. With such thoughts, the two of them who had been reincarnated in the true force realm for millions of years, had almost completely lost their memories of reality, decided to seize this opportunity. If they could keep the true martial holy emperor here, it would be a great advantage for the evil ghost faction. The 9 great holy cities couldn't suppress the evil ghost faction anymore. The history of the true martial world would be completely rewritten. Only one shackle would be left on the heads of the true martial world's martial artists, and that was to break the cage of this world. About half an hour later, the two's lofty ambitions were completely destroyed. After following Qin Guang to the top of the Great Snow Mountain, Qin Guang only used one palm to completely suppress their strength. Even if the two of them tried to break the shackles on their bodies and tried to perish together with each other, it was futile. The gap between the two sides was too big. What is your purpose? Wu Qingming, who was suppressed by Qin Guang on the ground, could only sit cross-legged. She couldn't even get up and said angrily. Abbess Xianxia became more talkative. If you think you can disintegrate the evil ghost faction by capturing us, stop dreaming. We have long expected such a day. Even if you don't come back, our lives will come to an end. We have already set many rules for the evil ghost faction. Even if the two of us die, the evil ghost faction will still not waver. Yes, even if we die today, our memories of this life are incomparably deep. We will still be the same in our next life. Qin Guang saw that the two of them were still stubborn, so he simply sat down. How many times do I have to say it before you will believe me? I really have no malice towards you. The two people you caught before, one is called Xianxia and the other is called Wu Miaoan. Think about your names again. Have you ever thought about why you give yourself such names in every life? They are indeed your most precious disciples in the past. Ignoring the two's extremely puzzled eyes, it was obvious that the two of them were wondering why he knew so clearly. Let's put it this way, the two of you, the story has to start a long time ago. Next, Qin Guang talked about the process of how he met Xianxia and Wu Miaoan. He talked about the establishment of the Tian division, and finally talked about the battle with the evil faction led by Ouyang Tianxing. At first, the two seniors didn't believe everything he said. They only thought that he was making up a story to disintegrate their willpower. However, when Qin Guang said that the two seniors had died to save him, the two of them still looked tense. It was as if a bolt of lightning flashed in their minds. That's how it is. After the two of you died, Xianxia and Wu Miaoan became the masters of the Thousand Extremities sect in the 10,000 Flowers Valley respectively. I also made the 2 deputy ministers of the Tian division. They can be regarded as the most powerful people in Jianghu besides myself. The Thousand Extremities sect and the 10,000 Flowers Valley also rapidly grew from 2 marginal small sections. I originally thought that this could be regarded as an explanation to the 2 seniors. However, now that I see the 2 of you being reborn here, it can be regarded as the heavens' eyes opening and giving me another chance. In fact, the 2 of you don't understand one thing. For me, the so-called 9 great holy cities in the true martial domain are not essential. Both of you are my seniors and I am greatly indebted to you. You are my people. If you think about it, so what if the evil ghost faction gets the world of the true martial domain? Based on what I have seen and heard these days, I also think that the evil ghost faction is indeed more noble than the 9 great holy cities. It is indeed more helpful to the entire true martial domain. When this matter is over, I will simply disband the 9 great holy cities. In the future, the true martial domain will be handed over to the evil ghost faction. Hearing Qin Guang's words, the 2 seniors found it hard to believe. Is this true? Disband the 9 great holy cities? Wu Qingming asked. Qin Guang nodded. A gentleman's words cannot be taken back. I am not joking. In addition, you have also made a mistake. I have never thought of using the 9 great holy cities to enslave the true martial domain. The reason why the 9 great holy cities remained was because of many coincidences. It wasn't because I had any needs for them. In addition, I believe that you have also realized the shackles of fate in the true martial domain. This is a cage. You can't get out even if you want to. I can't do anything about it. Even I can't help you. Abbess Xen Huan said in a deep voice. This is impossible. You are the only person who has transcended. You must know how to break free from this cage. You also know that after leaving the true martial domain, you will reach a more complete world. Qin Guang said again, haven't I already said it before? Once you leave this true martial world, you will arrive in the outside world. The 2 of you died in the outside world before you entered this place. The souls of the 2 of you are more complete. This is also the reason why the 2 of you are stronger than others despite being martial emperors. In addition, how can you be sure that the outside world is not a cage? Although Qin Guang was asking the 2 of them, he was also asking himself at the same time. If the universe where the earth is located is also a cage, then is the endless divine domain just a more advanced cage? Lu Li is trapped in the heavenly Holy Grail. He has become the master of this Holy Grail. It seems that his mission is to rescue Lu Li. But even if Lu Li was rescued, she would only be able to move from a smaller cage to a larger one. This thought just popped up in his mind and made him shiver all over. He quickly gathered his thoughts. The 2 of you, did you understand what I said just now? Qin Guang asked. During the conversation, he relaxed the suppression of the 2's power. Abbess Xen Huan and Wu Qingming suddenly felt the pressure on them lighten. This time they did not take the initiative to attack Qin Guang. Although the 2 of them were still in a daze, their rationality told them that Qin Guang was speaking the truth. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.